So Audra and Janice,
Yes.
it's 6:30. What do you recommend? Do I wait? Do we wait to see who else needs to show up?
We got one.
I was just counting to see, I think you have a quorum.
We got one more that's waiting to be let in. Pamela. Oh, I have to do twice. Here it goes. Yeah, I believe you have a quorum now. You've got at least 6 in here that I can see. So you're live anyway. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Why don't we begin by kind of reintroducing ourselves and starting this second night of the 2023 Budget Committee meeting for the town of Camden. I'm Peter Lindquist, as you could probably see on the screen, and my co-chair partner, Sarah Skravinovich. That's close, but
Close, yeah.
pronunciation, very close. Was not with us last week, and so she'll be helping out this evening's meeting. Before we get started, I did not take the time to either introduce everybody or at least take a roll call. Could we just go through and just Leisha, could you just say hello and just you're here and part of the meeting?
Yes, I'm Leisha Price, and am I to introduce myself? I've lived in Camden 9 years, and I live on Washington Street. I'm an artist, and this is my second year on the budget committee.
Terrific. Thank you so much. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Wendy Rich. Wendy, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Wendy Rich. This is my 3rd year on the committee. We've lived in Camden for 27 years. We're on Pearl Street. Raised 2 daughters here.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. Sarah, could you go?
Sure, I'm just unmuting. Sarah Scrivenich, so your pronunciation was close. 9 years living in Camden, 2nd year on the budget committee, currently raising 2 girls in this area. And I think I said this for the brief time I was on last week, but Andy, my husband, is on this committee, but he is engaged in some classes. So he actually booted me out of my office so that he could use the space. So anyway, so he's on, but that's me.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we'll talk a little bit about Andy a little later in the meeting and before we get into it. Courtney, could you introduce yourself? Thank you.
Sure. I'm Courtney Sukforth. I live over on Glenfield Circle in Camden, in one of the last affordable housing developments that CAHO did before they disbanded. But I'm growing 3 children here in Camden, and I don't know what else to say. This is my 3rd year on the budget committee.
Wow.
And I really enjoy it. So thanks.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. And Pamela?
Hi, I'm Pamela Gleason. I live on Harrison Avenue in Camden. I've lived here for 12 years, but have had friends in the area for a long time. I've been coming to Camden since about the mid 80s, and so happy to have finally gotten to move here. And this is my 2nd year on the budget committee.
We're glad to have you. Thank you. And Mary Winchell, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mary Winchell. I've lived in Camden for about 12 years. This is my 3rd year on the budget committee, and I'm a retired teacher librarian.
Wow, great. Thank you so much. And Audra, if it's okay, we could let the department heads introduce themselves and as we go along. There's my other co-chair, Nancy Harmon Jenkins. Go ahead, Nancy. Tell us all about you.
Oh, I didn't realize I was your co-chair. I thought that Sarah Scrivenich was Scrivenich. However, yeah, all right. I'm your co-chair, people say, have you always lived in Camden? And have you lived in Camden all your life? And I give the usual main reply, not yet. But I've lived here a long time. And this is my second year on the budget committee. And I really, really think it is such an important committee. And I hope you're all committed to it, committed to the committee, because it's one way to get that feeling of community. It's so important in a small town like this. So we'll all join together with our officials and so forth, and we'll go to work.
That's right. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
How did I
A
get
couple
to
of other-
your co-chair, Peter?
Well, trust me, it'll move around. We'll work each
All right.
other in. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
As long as
Um,
Courtney's your co-chair tomorrow night, I'm all right.
We'll see what we can do. A couple of other housekeeping notes, and this is she helped me today. Audra informed me that I had made a mistake in sending emails to a group of committee members, and that is a not acceptable methodology to communicate to more than one person in a democratic and a municipality committee. And so from here on out, I will post those 4 or 5 emails that I sent to you all collectively as part of our record, and it will be part of our budget committee document going forward for the whole public to at least take advantage of and see and read. So it will not be a private or a purposeful swaying of any type or direction. Trust me, it was morely informational. The other point that Audra helped me with today was speaking about Sarah and Andy Skrivanovich. Andy is a participant in our fire EMS training program, and I was worried that there might be either a conflict of interest because he is a paid participant in that program. So we can, if I understand that correctly, Audra, we can vote whether or not to ask him to recuse himself, or why don't you explain what would be the best policy going forward when we get into the fire department?
Sure. So specifically for the fire department, if Andy explains to the group his relationship with the department as a paid volunteer, and then the group can make a determination if you believe it's a conflict of interest and vote on whether or not to let Andy vote on that particular area of the budget. And this is, with any sort of area where you feel like you might have a perceived conflict of interest, if you want to bring it to the entire group and sort of explain it and have everyone else vote on it. Moving forward, if anything like that should come up, that's how you can address it as a group.
So
Okay.
Audra, just a quick question. So yeah, because I had raised it. So Andy's obviously not on the call tonight. So if we do vote by default, he's not involved. I didn't know because we're married if I also potentially have to recuse myself from that, just by the nature of that relationship.
Yes,
Is it the same criteria? I could just state what he does. Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you, Sarah. And I will need a little help tonight because I don't think I did a very good job last week in wrapping up the either the items that we left on to be worked on tonight, and how can we and Audra, you could, we did not make any decisions on insurances. Is that correct? Right. So that is the place where we start tonight. Is that clear? Right. Does everybody understand that? That's where we left it, that item in our booklet? I think that is a yes. Do any members of the committee want to start and ask any questions about the wonderful world of insurance in our different departments and the way that the town of Camden pays for them?
I think just one question I know that I missed, and I apologize for missing most, like I think half of the last session. and Audra, I think the time that I was on, I had asked about the health insurance and that bidding. But I guess the only other more general question I have is there a review and a reassessment for the broader insurances beyond the health plans that also gets reviewed or put out to bid or reassessed to make sure that we're looking at other competitive options? What's the process beyond just the healthcare?
Sure. So with and just to be clear, the health insurance is built into all the departmental budgets. So what you'll all be voting on tonight is our general liability insurance, so property and casualty insurance, workers' comp, unemployment, and I believe that's everything on that list. And so for the general liability, that gets bid out every year by Allen Agency. So they'll go out and seek different quotes on premiums through different providers. With the workers' comp insurance, we really only have one option because we were forced to leave Maine Municipal workers' comp insurance back in, I believe it was 2016 was the first year that the town was not on MMA's workers' compensation insurance. And the only policy that we could get workers' comp under was through MEMIC. So that's really our only option. Let me see what else. And unemployment is offered through the state of Maine.
And can I ask a couple of other little follow-ups with auto, like auto liability? We have lots of vehicles. I mean, is that kind of quoted like at Allen or does that get out to different groups or?
Yeah, so Allen bids it out every year.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Peter.
Yeah.
Going back to the workman's comp problem, you said, Audra, that in 2016 it sounds like we were forced out of the Maine municipal employees because of something that happened. Is it possible to get back into that since so much time has passed without presumably any further incidents? And is it to our advantage to do that?
I do not believe so. So the reason we were asked to leave was because Camden was just too high a loss rate and they couldn't carry us anymore on their policy. And MEMIC by state law has to cover public entities that have no other option. So really, that was the only reason we got onto MEMIC. It's really been a financial benefit to the town. I think a good example is the city of Rockland wanted to move over from MMA onto MEMIC, but they weren't able to because they did have another option. They had that option through MMA. But typically, MEMIC's premiums have been much more competitive than MMA's.
So we're not penalized for that, that lapse, whatever it was.
No, I mean, it certainly did when we originally switched over to MEMIC. And I don't know the exact, details around this. All I can do is sort of speculate from, looking back through the, the premium that the town was paying in that, 2016-17 period. We had an incredibly high premium for a municipality. It was something like $312,000, I believe. And for, a municipality of our size, that is notably high. So, MEMIC knew that we were sort of a risk taking us on. They had no other choice because legally they had to. But through, a series of different initiatives and work put in by the town, we've been able to sort of decrease our premium over the years. And definitely there have been, some years where it goes up and some years where it goes down, based on the losses that we've experienced and the cost of those losses. So we're entering a period now where the losses that we incurred from that January 2020 to January 21 period are hitting us. They didn't hit us last year. It typically takes 2 years for that to show up. But I would say that we are working with MEMIC to address some of those issues, and they're very supportive.
Right. And Nancy and Audra, thank you so much, because that was my next question, and that's why I wrote you those emails that will be shared with everybody in the public. But I just want to say, or at least ask, I'm glad Randy and Chris and Mr. St. Laurent is that we must, I would hope you could show us a plan and a program of safety and loss prevention and just how to reduce injuries over the next, not 1 year, but say 2 and 3 years going forward. And I'm going to bring it up again and again and again, because you look to budget, you want to budget 153 for workers' comp, right?
Yep, that was the premium quote.
That's 153. That gets back down to what we were paying in 2017 and 2018. That's a lot. I mean, we're going backwards.
No, and I just want to be accurate. 2017, our premium was 253,000.
Okay, well, okay, all right. Oh, okay, all right, thank you, sorry. So, okay. Any other questions, comments? Does what we're talking about make sense to everybody?
And one thing I did want to follow up on, because I think I told everyone I would look at a higher deductible, lower premium option for our general liability insurance. And I reached out to Allen Agency, and we currently have a very, very low deductible of $1,000 for general liability. And I asked about a $5,000 deductible plan. And they advised me that it really wasn't worth switching, because the impact on the premium would be about a $250 difference. Right. So okay. There's the really unexciting follow-up.
Any other questions or any other? Do you see where we might have some room in this budget?
I think of a lot of the different areas. This is one where it's pretty fixed. We have a premium quote, and it typically is what it is. And like I said, we really only have one choice with workers' comp. So,
have we voted on this insurance budget or not?
No, that's what we're doing right now.
Okay, all right. Should I move?
We talked. Yep, we talked about it last week, and this is what we're working on. Go ahead, Nancy. I'm sorry.
Well, I would like to move that we accept the town manager's budget of $257,700.
I'd second that.
A tiny bit of discussion. I just want to point out, like it's right in our book, that's an 18% increase over last year. That's all. I'm just going to put that out there. Just remember, when somebody talks to you and complains about something, that this is part of how we balance and how we run a municipality. That's fine. Any other discussion? Anybody else want to chime in?
I just have a question, and you guys probably talked about this last time when I missed the meeting, but I'm just curious as to, I understand that it doesn't really budge, but the workman's comp last year being so low at the 69,000, was that due to just COVID stuff, or of why that was so low compared to this year's?
Well, but Courtney, when you read the 69,000,
yeah,
you see it? It's to date. So
we're
not finished.
I see.
We're not finished the year yet. Right.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. All right. All right.
Just kidding.
All right. Any other questions? Yep, Sarah.
And again, I'm reacclimating my eyes to these numbers, not the ones I was looking at earlier. The 18% increase year over year, is that significantly higher than year over year increases in the past several years, or has that been par for the course?
This is, go ahead, Audra. You are better
Yeah.
at talking about trends, and that's what we were talking about when I wrote you earlier.
Yes, so there was a huge drop from the first year we were on MEMIC's policy, which was that 16, 17 year to the years after. And we've we've gone up and down between like 100, a little over below 110 to 120. And we shot up this year because of not the past year. The past year we only had four claims that were made for workers' comp, and they were all pretty minor in loss value. It was the year before, prior to that, the 20 to 21 year where it shot up. And it really came down to one claim when you look at all the data, because if you remember, that was right in the middle of COVID, and any potential COVID exposure had to be, particularly if it was at work, had to be reported as part of the workers' comp insurance. None of those were, nobody ended up getting COVID through exposure at work, but they still all had to be reported. So it looks like we had a lot of claims that year, 14 instead of what we normally have, which is sort of under 10. And, if you look at all the other losses that were incurred, typically they were under $500 or even $1,000. And then there was one that was incredibly high. So this is all really driven by one incident.
Okay. And there's one last thing, and then we gotta move on. And I hope Audrey and maybe Randy and Mr. St. Laurent and other, maybe even the department head that is not here from the Parks and Rec department, is you had a safety committee, Audra, that you said is, I just would like to hear that has a strategic plan of being active and participating in all of these departments.
Yes, so Dave Morrison is actually the chair of the town safety committee. All the department heads are members, and we have monthly meetings. And that's where we sort of talk about any first report of injury or incident, as well as if anything happens or anything that needs to be talked about from a safety perspective, it's discussed amongst the committee. And I think it's worked well to have department heads doing it. In the past, the philosophy was always deputy department heads to try to build that leadership capacity, but I don't think that they necessarily felt as if they had the mandate to implement changes. So I think that having department heads has helped with that part of it.
And we have records. We have records of that safety committee meeting stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I
think
Randy's kind of gotten out of minute taking responsibilities, but other than that, we all alternate.
Okay. So is that it for discussion? Can we vote on this? It's on the floor. Does anything else have to be said? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, thank you. So that takes care of what we should have done last week, but you've got two line items, 3, debt analysis, capital reserves, and capital improvements, and they show up in each block. So are we supposed to cover and review capital reserves and improvements and debt analysis regarding?
So we don't have to go into my spiel on that tonight, but since different departments will be proposing either capital equipment or capital projects or both, we just want to make sure that you're all aware of that so we can reference it as we go through the deliberations. So all right, you're free to move forward to I think the PD was first.
Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Okay, and so without further ado, Mr. Gagné, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Randy Gagné. I'm the police chief. If I haven't met any of you, I think I'd probably either run into you at some point. Here for our annual appeal to fund the police department. Jody is going to run my PowerPoint presentation. For those of you that were on the committee last year, it's kind of the same, except for I did some updates on the slides. It was my first ever PowerPoint, and I was quite proud of it, so I figured I'd use it again. I would like, if I could just take a minute, Mr. Chair, to recognize the hardworking officers of our police department. We've had a pretty rough 2 years with COVID and every other thing going on in the world. And I'd like to say that, you know, our officers have been there every day. They didn't change any of their shifts. We worked for most of those 2 years with 2 officers down. We were 3 officers down when Lucas Verio went to the academy for 18 weeks. But those officers came in, showed up to work, and did their jobs. And a shout out to my Rockport officers as well, who helped cover. And thank you very much to all my staff.
And I'd like to just piggyback on that, Randy, just a tiny bit, because I've met so many new officers between Rockport and Camden. And I want to tell the rest of the board that our town and our public safety department, police department, is a place that trains officers that go throughout all of the state of Maine. They don't stay here for long. Some do, some don't. But this town has been very, very strong in hiring and training and really working. No, I'm serious. I've met, and I speak to different communities. Where do they get their training? Right here with our department. So my hat's off to you.
We really hate being one of the better training agencies and people wanting all of our employees, but you know, the better we train our officers, the better they perform on the streets.
Okay, thank you.
Jody will run my PowerPoint because I sometimes have that walking and chewing gum thing. So we'll start off. That's our beautiful patch that we have in the town of Camden. And slide 2 is why we're here for the budget presentation. You can snap on the second one, Jody. Yeah, that's why we're here. Okay, so I'll talk about staffing on our next slide. The Camden Police Department is staffed with the following. I'm the police chief. I am shared with Rockport, and my salary and benefits are based on the town population statistics. Currently in this budget, Camden pays 59 point. No. I'm having a computer issue. All right, I'm back. 59.29 and 40.71 for chief services. I have a second in command as a lieutenant. I have 2 patrol sergeants and a detective sergeant. We have 6 patrol officers when we're fully staffed. We have been running at deficit staffing with 2 vacancies. I have just hired an officer who comes with 12.5 years of experience from the Waldo County Sheriff's Department, who just started last week. We're very excited to have him on board with us. We have a parking enforcement officer. I took the parking enforcement officer's position and added a lot of other things to it. Scott not only does the parking enforcement, he also does, he sits in for Jeff, my administrative assistant, when he's out. He does animal control, he does custodial work, and just all around whatever we need him to do. I have an administrative assistant, Jeff Sukeforth. Jeff runs a lot of our public outreach, Sand for Seniors, the Good Morning Camden Rockport program. And our staffing has remained at the same levels for over 2 decades. We have not added any officers. Our hours of operation, we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The administrative office is open Monday through Friday. You can see the hours. When the office is closed, there's a phone located in the lobby at 31 Washington Street that connects you with our communications center, who supplies dispatch services for us. And there's our office number and the numbers for the communications center. Officer schedules, patrol division and sergeants work 4 on 4 off. They bid on the shifts yearly in April by seniority. The detective sergeant schedule is a 4 on 3 off. The administration works 4 on 3 off, 10-hour shifts. The lieutenant and I are both on call 24 hours a day. My morning started at 2:30 when I got a text from a Rockport officer who lost a drive shaft on his way to a complaint. The Camden officer was nice enough to pick him up and go help him out at the the complaint, then charged him a small Uber fee, I'm sure. And then our administrative assistant and parking enforcement work 5 on 2 off 8-hour shifts. So overtime is averages, we request $55,000 per year. The average cost, if you take patrol sergeants and patrol officers, is $44.15. You break that down, and that covers 1,245 hours per year. We don't fill over 200 shifts per year. If I take a vacation day, we don't fill my shift. The second in command covers for me. Same thing with him, the detective sergeant. We also do probably 75 shifts where we fill only 4-hour blocks, which is the usual, the busiest parts of those shifts. We have experienced extremely low staffing levels, as I explained earlier, but getting back to full staff will help that. We're in hopes that we can keep the overtime under that. One major incident would take up a lot of overtime, a severe accident where we have to spend lots of time, a crime scene that we might have to cover for 24 hours. Those things eat up that 1,245 hours. Special events, Toboggan Nationals is one, fireworks during the summer, and things like that. So I'm comfortable with that number. We did increase it, I believe it was last year, from 50 to 55. As wages go up, that also affects that number as well too. But if we filled everything, we'd be into the 100,000 plus, and we know that that's not what the town wants. So we have to be creative as to how we fill that. Some of the things we do to figure out when it's safe, we never can expect, never know when the big call is going to come, but by looking at complaint history, level of training of the officers that are on duty and things like that, that's how we make those staffing adjustments. By far, the largest amount of our budget is 94.7, so that leaves less than 6% to do training and things like that, equipment for the officers. Ammunition has gone through the roof. We qualify everybody twice a year. So, the personnel costs, we understand, are very high, but because we have adequate staffing, we train our officers well. Camden does enjoy one of the lowest crime rates in the state of Maine. The patrol division is represented by the Maine Association of Police. It's a collective bargaining unit. We are well underway for our current contract negotiations. The contract expires June 22. Hydra and I have been able to negotiate contracts with our union in-house, which we have a great working relationship with the union. We're able to sit down, come up. The officers in the union always come up with very thought out proposals for their contracts, and we have not had to bring outside litigation in to do these because we do have that great working relationship, and that's a savings for the town. We're adequately staffed and funded when we're fully staffed, and I've got to try to move this over here. All right. And having proper service, proper staffing allows us to give 3-tier service. Tier 1 service is your emergency response. Calls involve crimes in progress. The presence of an officer is needed to repress criminal activity and protect citizens. This category would include order and maintenance, disturbance calls that may lead to a violent property destruction, as well as medical emergencies. These are time critical, where officers can take some type of prevention, deterrence or apprehension, action to provide other emergency services. All other agencies must respond to these types of calls. Tier 2 is the non-emergency type response. Call is after the fact, primarily collecting information, statements if necessary, and reports. Calls, while they're important, do not require rapid response. These would include things like late report accidents, stolen property, information from police, anything that the crime has already occurred that we can take our time and gather those facts after the fact. Tier 3 is quality of life type issues, crime prevention efforts, traffic management, community policing, foot patrols, drug takebacks, well-being checks, COVID-19 issues. I threw that in there because we did a lot of public information, passing out pamphlets, talking to people on the sidewalks when we wanted people wearing masks in the downtown area, things like that. Safety seat inspections is another thing we do. So that would be your levels of service that we can provide in the Camden Police Department. Our total call volume for last year was 563 calls. And what that is calls for service. That can be officer initiated, traffic stops, things like that. People who call the 911 center to report a crime or any type of activity or actions the officer takes. So this is a slide from last year. Basically, we did a lot more COVID things this year. We did 130 and 30 foot patrols the year before. We didn't take any enforcement action. We did both basically public information, passing out the flyers, educating people. We walked around, talked to our store owners because there was a lot of questions. And as everything was evolving as fast as it was sometimes, it was necessary to do those things and keep people, in tune to what changes were being made and whatnot. We received voluntary compliance in about everything we did COVID-wise. We weren't, we ended up having some bouts with COVID in-house the last year. About half of our staff either contracted or were close contacts. We had to have people. That was evolving too, as to how long you had to be out if you had an exposure and whatnot. Being 2 officers short, and with Lucas at the academy for 18 weeks when we had COVID issues in-house, we were fortunate not everybody got it at once. It was kind of spread out, but we decontaminated, we cleaned, we sent people home if we thought there was a chance that they were contaminated or had contracted COVID. We took a lot of precautions. So that further decreased the amount of officers we had at some points. But, working with Rockport, we were able to cover those staffing shortages. We returned the favor to them when we had some issues there as well. So we were still able, as short as we were, to give the same service to our communities without any interruption to service at all. Some of the programs that we offer our residents, Jeff Sukeforth, I can't thank him enough for the great work that he does with the Good Morning Camden Rockport program. This program has really paid off. There's been several times when a participant didn't answer the phone, and we've sent an officer to check on that person, and we have found that they were in medical distress. And at least one of those, the person would have succumbed to the injuries they had sustained if the officer hadn't been there. Great program, and I can't encourage anybody listening out there that thinks somebody could use it, please give us a call. We also do sand for seniors. If a senior needs a bucket of sand so their walk's slippery, we'll take it out, and in a lot of cases we'll even put the sand down for them. We don't want them falling down. Unwanted medication, we collect hundreds of pounds of unwanted medication to get it out of the potential of it getting into somebody's hands that shouldn't be having it, and it gives residents the comfort knowing they have a safe place to deposit that, and we will take care of that. We do residential fingerprinting. Number of people, school teachers, people traveling abroad, many different. Some of it's for employment. If you come in, we can make you an appointment. We'll do your fingerprints for you. That's just a few of the things we do. So last year we talked about the fleet and the select board's desire for us to work towards hybrid vehicles. Currently, I'm not reading these word for word because I don't want to bore you, but you can see them. Currently, we have 2 hybrids in our fleet. I'm assigned a Ford Fusion Responder hybrid. I've doubled my fuel mileage. I can tell you, I wasn't a big fan of hybrids when it was brought to my attention. We ought to look that way, but I'm absolutely in love with the car I have. Unfortunately, Ford has decided to go away from making that model anymore. And we recently purchased a Ford SUV Interceptor that's a gas electric hybrid. When I took over as chief, we used to turn our cars over every 2 years. Well, with the price of cars and the time it takes to set them up and the cost it takes to set them up, I've pushed that out to 4. I have a vehicle this year I'm requesting to replace that is a 2014. So we have extended the lives of our vehicles by double of what we were doing. I anticipate buying another Ford Interceptor SUV hybrid. I've just gone through this in Rockport. The availability of cruisers this year is like everything. It's the regular vehicle market. If you've tried to buy something new, it's computer chips. I think that I'll be able to get one. I know Dodge this year ended their 2022 production 2 weeks after opening it up. So there was a great deal of vehicles that weren't going to be put into the police market this year. I think that's only going to get worse for next year because everybody who wanted cars this year who couldn't get them are going to be looking as well. If we continue to have microchip issues with availability, we could have problems finding a vehicle. It's going to be one of those years. If you find one, I was able to find 2 for Rockport, and I have my name on those to get those, and those were 22 weeks out. I anticipate I'm going to have the same issue with finding one for Camden, but I'm in hopes that there'll be one available. I continue to explore looking at all electric vehicles. I think at this point, we're getting used to the hybrids. I like the idea of the gas electric hybrid. These cold days out here, I don't know how that would work. I have heard that there is reduced mileage with extremely cold weather, which is to be expected. I think, like I said, the gas electric hybrid seems to be the best fit for our department this time. But I think we're all going to be at fully electric in the next 10 years. And I'm interested in looking further. I anticipate doing that as well in Rockport. So it's a work in progress. We continue to work, I'm the chief in both towns, but we are still two separate agencies. We still have a common mission. Our offices work closer than ever. And the great thing about this joint effort is our supervisors are allowed to make decisions in either town. If Camden supervisor hears a high-speed chase that has started in Rockport, they have the ability to call that chase off. Same thing with Rockport. Our officers are allowed to respond for backup in either town, which in cases of domestic violence and things like that, that's what we want. Emergencies at the hospital with somebody that's out of control, you want 2 officers heading to those situations. It has worked very well, and I'm in great hopes that it continues to do that. One thing I want to bring out that we have done this year is in 2021, I contracted with Durgo Safety to bring all of our departmental policies to Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program standards. These are the latest and greatest and newest written policies. I'm very familiar with the staff on the policy board for Durgo, and they are some of the finest officers in the state of Maine, very knowledgeable in their subject matters and in the creation of policy. Durgo usually charges $7,500 per department, but where Rockport and Camden share matching policies, they gave me both departments for $7,500, which we split with Rockport. Camden paid the first of $3,750, and Rockport will pay for the second half. Having this great set of policies. We had very good policy before, but like I said, some of those policies hadn't been updated for many years. And these are policies that are written to Maine law enforcement accreditation program standards. It puts us on path to becoming an accredited agency, both agency being accredited if we choose to go that way. And that's something that I anticipate that we will work for. We're getting the basics down right now. This will broaden our policy. It greatly gives the officers much more guidance, and it also, reduces liability by having professional policies in place. We are not members for the risk pool for Maine Municipal, but Maine Municipal has a document service that Rockport is, and they have allowed us to upload our policies so the officers can go to the Maine Municipal website, read the policy, check off and certify that they have completed those. Great program. We're about halfway there with implementation. We're still working on finishing up. This also gives us all of our Bureau of Labor Standards policies, so we're up to date on all of those as well. Staffing from either agency can fill vacancies in either town. How we do that is the Camden officers are offered Camden overtime first. Rockport is offered their overtime first. If we don't have anybody, then we will seek resources from the other town. The officers are paid their overtime rate. Like I just said, the officers are able to cross the lines with for emergency service, critical incidents and things like that, backup. And the big thing is, we don't want anybody responding to those complaints by themselves. Our communication is run through the Knox County Regional Communications Center. You will have a request for an amount of money later on tonight for that service. That is what they charge, and there's not a lot of argument there. So, and I've done this, I think this is my 12th budget. And I've got to say that every committee I've worked with have thrown out very good questions. The boards and the managers are excellent to work with. And Camden has always given us a budget where we can train our employees to the best standards, to equip them with the equipment they need to do their jobs. And, we have great staff that comes to work every day to do that. We couldn't do that without people like yourselves taking that time out of your day to do these budget meetings and look things over and look for the best of the town. And, I appreciate everything that's done. I appreciate the support that we receive from everybody. And that is it. I hope I didn't bore you too bad. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer if I can.
Oh, look, Sarah.
I
Sarah,
know.
you're first.
I know. It just happens. And Randy, thanks for the presentation. And I was on last year, and it was still informative in a new way. So you keep the PowerPoints, and yes, it was still helpful. I have two questions. One that, and then I think they're somewhat tied together, but do you have a more granular breakdown? I think there was, like you said, there's 5,500 some odd calls. Do you have a breakdown? Because you said it's everything from traffic, incidents to, obviously the crime incidents. Do you have a breakdown of what that looks like and how that, okay, of course. Yeah. Is that in here? Did I just miss it, or is it?
No, I can get it if anybody would like to have it. It is a breakdown of every call that we go to.
Yeah.
I can read some off, for instance, we had 911 hangups. We had 319 of those.
Yeah.
275 agency assist, administrative complaints were,
and
I can get these to Audra and you can look them over.
Yeah. And maybe it'll lead more into the second question that I have. So if they're available, that'd be awesome.
Sure.
Because one of the things, and call it reverse COVID engineering, call it just the time in which we're living in, but obviously like the need for mental health support, the need for, so again, not asking for like potentially domestic violence calls, but I was just doing some obviously a lot of talking about mental health support and looking at things like there's like mental health learning centers that like Portland's piloting. I'm just curious, like in the staffing, in the shape of the department, have you guys ever engaged or thought about working, or do you have any collaboration?
Well, it's funny you asked this question because I just got off the phone yesterday with the sheriff. So Peter, I don't know how long you want me to digress on some stuff.
No. This is a program. There's a program down at Knox County. I was ready to ask you about it. So go ahead.
Okay. So last summer, we were all at work here at Camden PD, and we had a situation that was occurring in Lincolnville with someone who was in mental distress that became a barricade situation with the potential that they had weapons with them. So state law requires, throwing these out so I don't forget them, state law requires that every police agency in the state have at least 20% of their staff trained in crisis intervention team training. Camden far exceeds that, but we're at like 80%. We're at 100% at one point but I've got new officers now that haven't had a chance, and that is something that every officer has the opportunity to attend. Well, crisis intervention team training teaches officers from different agencies the same program. So we were asked by Waldo to emergency respond to this situation. We show up on scene. The Waldo officers had got there just after we did. And the first thing I saw was a formulation of a plan. And the first words out of their mouth is, let's not escalate this at all. Let's see if we can get this de-escalated. And these officers have never worked this type of complaint together before, but they were communicating, and the de-escalation was the first thing on their mind. So long story is, we were able to make contact. The officers talked to the individual. We were able to get that individual to come outside. There was no escalation. We brought everything down. We got them some help. But while the officers were working on that, Waldo called their community crisis intervention person who works for the sheriff's office, and they responded. Excellent person to have. They showed up. The officers and the crisis intervention worker worked together. This person ended up going to Penn Bay for an evaluation in an ambulance. The intervention person went to Penn Bay and stayed with them while they were doing that. So first thing I did was I came back and I told Audra, I said, because Audra and I had talked about this before, how we could do something like that. And I told her how great that actually went, and it's something that we needed to look into. So the number of mental health cases that we run into per year is a very small amount of our total complaint per year. It's probably like, I think I did the math, and it was like 1.8% of the total call volume. Well, that doesn't matter if somebody is in crisis. So the sheriff and I had been talking that, it probably wouldn't be fiscally a great idea to try to hire somebody for just Camden, but to more look at somebody like Waldo has on a county level that could respond to any agency within the county. And possible funding for that would be through our county assessment every year. I know the sheriff has talked about it in his budget meetings. I don't know where that has gone at this point.
Well,
go ahead, Peter.
Randy, can I interrupt just, and I'm sorry, but I want to, there was an article and there was a statement from the Knox County Sheriff. It's called a One Mind campaign. And I was going to ask you if, number one, if Camden is part of it. One Mind campaign, and it's the Knox County Sheriff, and it is more about either mental health responses, substance abuse, Well,
I don't know it from the name One Mind, but I can tell you, I called the sheriff and I said, Waldo's got a pretty good deal going on here. We should jump on board of this. So we are fully in support of doing something at the county level. The sheriff and I have been talking, and we really are going to try to flesh this out this year. I don't know what that funding is going to be, but it is definitely on our radar because the importance of having that person there. Now, I've got to say, having our officers crisis intervention team trained even the youngest officers who haven't had the experience that some have had, I have seen the incredible work they have done firsthand in de-escalating. I myself, for some reason, have a knack to be able to talk to people. I routinely go to the hospital when there is a critical incident going on with a mental health patient, and I've had good success de-escalating those situations myself. But you know what? Everybody has that that ability to do that as well.
No, it's a good point. And again, thank you, Randy. Does that cover you, Sarah?
I'll keep my follow-up very short. I guess that's great to hear that it's well on your radar, because I think I don't know any families that are not trying to grapple with some form. So I'm thinking about the next 6, 12, 18 months, right? I guess my only question is from a budget perspective, is there, and I'm not minimizing the cruiser, and we'll get to all those numbers, but is there anything that needs to be bookmarked or anticipated for what that might need to be included as a place mark, so that you aren't excluded from potentially having that be part of what is included? I just want to give voice to that, to see if that's how that would be accounted for, knowing you don't have numbers or
I don't know what that would look like, but I think on a county-wide level, funding that through tax assessment would be the best way to do that. Now, if the county said tomorrow, yeah, we can do this, but we need some money, I'm sure the town of Camden is going to find that money. I can tell you, I don't want my staff has been overworked. I want to get back to full staff. I think offering that crisis intervention team training to any officer who has not had it would be a good path. And we're not going to sit on our hands here. This is a need that needs to happen, and we need to get somebody.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. Nancy, go ahead. Nancy, you're
there we
muted.
go. What Sarah was asking is very close to what I was asking. And I know, congratulations, Randy, on having the most crime-free municipality in the state of
Well, I didn't say the most.
Well, but it is all around us. I read the Bangor Daily News every morning, and it's full of headlines about speeding and crashes and deaths and confrontations with law enforcement and overdoses and all of that. And I think it's a good idea to be prepared for it. It's all around us and it's creeping in. But the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, I was slightly startled when you said it's something like we're aiming to get full, full departmental accreditation. What does that mean, and why don't we have it?
Well, accreditation is an expensive project to go through and to maintain. To have somebody to be an accreditation officer is you're basically having somebody run full-time in that capacity. I haven't had that person right now. That's why I'm taking a slow approach to get there. But it's something that we would like to do. Now, in talking to Sean O'Reilly from Durago Safety, they're actually looking to put together somebody that does accreditation management for departments. And I'm waiting to see what those fees would be, because if it is reasonable, I think it's something that we should be looking to do. It does things with accreditation. It gives you, we're already going to have the policy base, which is fantastic. There's just some other things, training on those policies. There's other things. Being accredited does bring your, has the potential of bringing your liability insurance for the police department down. So, I want to get there.
Thank you, Randy. Pamela, are you?
Yes, hi. Yeah, I have a question about the vehicle you were talking about hoping to purchase for yourself. Is that somewhere in your budget here? Is that a line item?
That'll be in the capital improvements.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you.
That'll be a patrol vehicle for the staff.
Got it. Thank you.
She didn't mean it was your vehicle, Randy.
Yeah, well.
No, that's okay though. That's okay, because he does have his own vehicle, but we'll get into that at another time. 2 other quick questions, and we got to keep moving on here.
Sure.
Is it number 1, Randy? We have an interlocal agreement with Rockport. Is that correct?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, are we part of the opioid settlement that was handed down and is going to be passed out in the next couple of years. The decision and the money was pumped out starting, I think, a year ago. Are we part of that settlement? Did Camden
Well,
sign on
part
to
of-
that?
Part of that settlement was the purchase of Narcan through the AG's office, I believe. And when we started administering Narcan, the AG's office has always supplied us with that Narcan, which is extremely expensive.
Okay,
So
so
we
we
are-
are a participant. We are part of
We
that.
are benefiting
Party.
from that settlement.
Okay,
money.
but the town is not party to the settlement. Is that correct, Audra?
Don't believe so. I can tell you, Peter, that a case of Narcan is costing the AG's office about $1,000, I think, and they have been supplying us that, so.
And that's for one dose?
No, that's a case of Narcan.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
multiple
Still,
doses.
that's an awful
Yeah.
lot of money, isn't it, for something that's so beneficial to people?
Well, it's an awful lot of money, but it's when you have officers saving people's lives because of
Yeah.
overdoses, you can't put a price on it.
So,
Peter,
and-
Peter, somebody had mentioned domestic violence.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that if I can. You know, the police department, again, domestics are a very small number. They're less than 1% of our complaint volumes, but even that's too many. But I just want people to know that we do partner with some great agencies, New Hope for Women, which I believe they've changed their name to New Hope Midcoast now, and Finding Our Voices with Patricia McLean and those brave survivors who have come out, those posters that have been put everywhere in the state of Maine, I really believe those are helping people to come forward, and we're happy to partner with them. We do follow-ups on those domestics. We had 3 domestic arrests last year. The numbers are low, but like I said, that's just 3 is too many.
Nancy,
I could point out too, in a conversation with one of the county commissioners today, she pointed out to me that the homeless problem in Knox County is almost entirely driven by domestic violence and divorce. In other words, it's women with small children who are unable to take care of themselves, who are looking for a home and can't find it. So it's not just that we object to people beating up on their partners, but also it extends right out into the community completely.
We do know that it's probably a very, very under-reported crime.
Right, yeah.
We're not foolish to think that it's not.
so, thank you, Randy. And not to just keep trying to truncate this, but also I just want to make a point that this budget item, this page right now that we're looking at, you're looking at $1.4 million to run our public safety police department. Okay, and so that's up 8%. So my question or my suggestion is the floor is open for, does anyone want to make any changes? Do you want to increase an item? Do you want to decrease an item? Does everything look fine to you as you represent the town, the voters?
I had a couple questions. It's just more of understanding something if he'd be able to answer. So I just noticed one of them being ticket supplies. It was line 501-1007. It looked like year to date or actual to date was 3,719. And is that just from January until now? Is that correct? How I'm reading that?
That would be the payment we use for cardinal tracking for our computer ticketing that we have to pay.
Oh, so it's not, it's like once
That's
you reach
not-
that amount, it's just capped, or that's how much it is. Is that what you mean?
I guess I don't follow your question. That line is to pay for ticket supplies, which cardinal tracking is the contract that we have to our computerized ticketing.
And our agreement with them is 4,500 for the year. Is that what?
No, the 45, I think it's 30. Jody probably might be able to tell you, but I think it's around 3,700. The rest of it would be chalk, the tickets themselves.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. The other one was the actuals to date. I had a question about the animal control. It just seemed really close already to the what you guys, the town manager and the department head had said already, so I wasn't sure
I
if
can
that needed to be
I can
increased.
explain animal control. That is basically for the pause contract that we have to pay every year. And it also pays for some of the response time for Scott when he does animal control stuff outside his regular duties time. I can tell you that we've recently had an animal that's had to go to the emergency vet that has run up quite a bill. So I anticipate that being way over. But that's this year's budget. That's out of this
A
year's.
really good question, Courtney, because Randy and I, given the high bill he was just talking about, we were saying how it's time to bring a policy to the select board about what we do in these instances, because
Yep.
it's just been one of these years where we've happened to have a couple of them in a 2-week span. So it's something that we need to look at a little more closely.
So when you bring, like you said, you bring the animal to the emergency vet, that's not, I mean, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any like canine unit, right, in our police department. So is that like, that's pause related?
If we bring a stray dog in, we're responsible for the expenses that dog incurs.
Gotcha. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's by
Okay.
state law.
All right. It appears that we're ready to, does anybody want to make any motions to change anything? Is everybody comfortable with everything?
I
Just ask
will-
one quick question. Just with the influx of people with COVID, are we meeting the needs of what I assume is our increased population with what we have?
I believe so. I mean, we've had population fluctuations in the past. I don't, if you're asking me if I need more police officers, no. I think our staffing is adequate for what we need. Peter, I've never seen you smile so big.
No, I don't know. I just, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. I think our staffing level is appropriate and we can deliver the service we do and enjoy a low crime rate.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to make a motion on reducing a line item. And I'll just say it, we could get it out there. I'd like to reduce the overtime amount from 55,000 to 50,000. And that would encourage Mr. Gagne to take all of these special events, all of these, I don't need to go down through the list, and actually make these special event organizations pay for the special coverage, special police duties on their tab instead of the town.
If I could, Peter, the biggest
Go ahead.
expense are town-related expenses that the select board decided years ago.
I repeat that I would put the pressure on that your overtime has gone. I'd like to make that motion of bringing that down to 50,000 from 55,000. That line item.
But Peter, it was 55,000 in FY19. It was almost 56,000. It was 53.5 in FY20. It dropped down to 45 in FY21, but we know what happened in 21. And 55 in 22, of which to date, only 24.5 has been spent. And as far as all those special events are concerned, most of them are over until the next financial year begins. So I don't know, maybe you're right, but it seems to me that 55 is in line with everything that has gone along, including the fact that prices have increased all over the board.
Do we have a second to the motion? Doesn't sound like it.
No.
So no second, so no motion. Okay, that was easy.
So
Any
I would
other
like to make a
discussion?
motion that we accept the police department budget of $1,446,550.
Any second?
Andy?
I second it.
Thank you, Alicia. Any discussion? Can we, everybody's happy? All in favor? All opposed? Okay, there we go. We are all set.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Yep. Do you, Peter, do you want to do the public safety dispatch? Or is that later on?
Hang on. Oh, that's right. The county dispatch, right?
Yes.
Well, Audra, why don't you take us through that?
Sure.
This is your relation, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. And also just to point out, if there are any detailed questions about Knox County Dispatch, Chris Farley sits on the board that oversees that. So he's here to present his budget, but he can also answer questions about that.
Okay.
So really, I think a way of thinking about this is it's more like an assessment than, sort of a budget item, because Knox County determines what, or the board that oversees the dispatch center makes a determination of what their budget is going to be, and it's assessed to all municipalities in Knox County based on their tax assessed value. So that's sort of how that service is split up and paid for throughout the county.
I have a question, Audra. Is it the county commissioners who set those fees based on obviously what various departments require? But does it go through the county commissioners?
Actually, that's a really good question for Chris. I believe it starts with their department head and then goes to the board that oversees them, which Chris is Chris, are you still the chair?
Yes, I am. Yep.
So after it goes to all of you to vote on, does it then go to the county commissioners?
The director reviews his budget with the county administrator. It then comes to the user group and the executive board, goes to the county budget committee, and then to the county commissioners.
I just
Thank you.
discovered that we have these 3 county commissioners that nobody ever knows who they are or what they do, but they're terribly important.
So do we have any other questions on that county dispatch item? Do we have a motion?
So I'll move again that we accept the county dispatch budget of $163,205.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you, folks. All right, next, Mr. Farley, looks like it's your turn.
Are we going to do the capitals tonight, Peter?
I think we should. The capital reserves and capital improvements.
Capital improvements. I have 2 on there. I didn't know if he was doing those.
Okay, so do you want to do those now? Is that what you're saying?
Whatever you want to do, that's totally up to you.
Because it's at the bottom of the list, but
Peter, I might suggest you might want to do it at the end, because Randy has some, Chris Farley has some items, as well as Dave St. Laurent in Public Works.
Does everybody understand that? That these are large purchases that the town is going to make, and especially in St. Lawrence department. It's going to take time years to pay them off. So we'll do those at the end of the evening tonight for all of these departments. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you, Randy. That was a good idea. Is that okay with you? So, thank you. All right, Chris, thank you for your patience.
No problem, Peter. Thanks. I'm Chris Farley. I'm the fire chief. I do have a PowerPoint that Jody's going to bring up, but just as Randy said, along with the appreciation for his staff, the same goes out to ours. We have myself and 3 other full-time employees, and It's always a moving target, but 16 part-time on-call firefighters, and they've been working diligently throughout the last couple of years, and certainly appreciate all they've done for us. And if Jody could start up our PowerPoint, that'd be awesome. So 2022 in 1847, a group of civic-minded Camden residents formed the Atlantic Engine Company No. 2, which was what started the Camden Fire Department, and that was mostly a bunch of people who volunteered and formed the fire department. And we pretty much have been running the fire department the same way as they did in 1847, except we now have a couple of full-time employees. And we're certainly seeing the same problems that are seen around the state, around the country, that it's a struggle to continue to provide fire service, ambulance service. We're using part-time on-call personnel. The first few slides are just kind of a summary of kind of the things that we did over the last year. Just a few slides, a few pictures on this slide of some events that took place over the last year. You'll see up in the upper left-hand corner, that is the Camden crew in the ladder truck, and we are parked right up next against a South Thomaston fire truck. And we're working together in Rockland. And what we're seeing over the last several years is it takes more and more communities to respond to one community to help provide fire and EMS protection. There were multiple communities here. This was a fire on Main Street in Rockland last January, I believe it was, 2021. Next picture there in the top middle is where we're out at the Snowball doing a chairlift evac drill with the ski patrol and folks from Coastal Mountain Search and Rescue. Next picture, the top right, is September of last year, where we helped a gentleman from Texas who was staying at the Mainstay Inn out hiking in the state park. He was headed up the Mount Batty Trail and fell and broke his ankle, and required us to carry him up to the top to where the northeast ambulance was waiting for him. Down below there, the next picture is again us working in Rockland. Working right underneath the Rockland truck, and again, that particular fire, we actually had folks, firefighters from Waldoboro there as well. The middle picture there is after the damage on Route 52 after the Halloween storm. We were coordinating there with the DOT to help get that road fixed. And the last picture, bottom left, is a search that we did in a state park in October of 2021. And again, working with Warden Service, Coastal Mountain Search and Rescue to help locate a lost hiker in the state park. Somebody who started out hiking when it was daylight and found themselves still in the park after dark and unable to find the way out. So we just basically had to go in and walk that person out. And we're seeing more and more, particularly in the last couple of years, the state park is seeing more use, people in the park that aren't necessarily used to being in there. And our call for service in the park has gone up quite a bit in the last couple of years. The next slide is kind of a snapshot of our incident responses for 2021. Give you an idea of the things that we do. And the largest one there, unintentional fire alarm activations. I'll just touch base on that because that usually gets a question. Anytime a fire alarm goes off, gets called into mostly Seacoast Security, we get a call through the Knox Regional Communication Center. Unintentional alarms are caused by a number of different reasons. Sometimes it's contractors who are working in places, and the best thing that we can do to, is always a goal of ours to reduce the unintentional alarm activations, is just to provide some education to contractors. A good chunk of those alarm activations we're actually finding in the last couple of weeks with the cold weather. We go to fire alarms and find broken water pipes. So there's actually a cause for the alarm activation. Might not be a fire, but we're finding damage and properties. And just in the box down the bottom, you can see the trends there in our annual incident response volumes. The next slide just kind of gives you a snapshot of days of the week when they happen. And last year, 2021, oddly enough, Sundays were our busiest days in terms of call responses. And the next slide gives you kind of an hour of the day. And I put down in the bottom there, you can see that's where we staff the department from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And since COVID, we've tried to staff it with 2 folks because we have definitely seen a drop in the number of our call firefighters responding to calls during the daytime. Just yesterday was an example of that. 7:30 in the morning, we had a call from the facility at Windward Gardens at 105 Mechanic Street about an odor of electrical burning in the building, and we had 5 people respond to that. 3 of them were full-time employees of the department, and 2 were the call firefighters. So if that was actually an incident at Windward Gardens, it would have required much bigger response. And typically, we are set up to have an automatic mutual aid response with Rockport, Lincolnville, and Hope anytime there's a confirmed fire. So that's just a snapshot there of what we try to do. And I want to have 2 people on during the day because I don't necessarily want those guys going out to calls by themselves. The next slide, I usually try and provide a significant event of the year. 2020, it was the fire at Lyman Morse. For us last year, it was February 25th, fire at 7 Mount Batty Street where the young gentleman died in the fire. And I just have a picture down there of, not a picture, but the automatic mutual aid we had with Rockport, Hope, Lincolnville, Northeast, as well as a request to Rockland for additional ambulances. And then, assisting us at the scene, there were investigators from the State Fire Marshal's Office, Camden PD, Camden Public Works, Central Maine Power, and the water company. So just an event like that takes a lot of resources to try and manage and bring under control. The next slide I did was just a couple of key items in the budget. So like I said, we are a combination department. We have 4 full-time personnel, myself, Assistant Chief Andrew Lowe, and 2 firefighters, Matt Heath and Clint Beveridge. 2019, we all became certified code enforcement officers. So for the last several years, we've been helping out the planning department. We've gone on for the last 2 years, probably close to all the inspections that they've had. So we're out with Rosie doing inspections. We were out with Steve Wilson before that. And really, that's been a benefit for us in terms of community risk reduction. It's given us the opportunity to get into many more buildings and kind of be familiar with the layout. And it's also given us a chance to address some life safety issues. We just, within the last couple of weeks, we've been working with the police department and the planning department. We found some folks living in a facility that had some serious life safety code issues, and have been able to work with the owner of that and get him to start working on those and get the people that were living there relocated. Working with Janice Eacency as well to get some housing for them, so that they're just not out on the street. So I'm proposing a couple things there. I did add some funding to the call firefighters to help provide them with a pay increase, as well as to give them a minimum number of hours, particularly during the nighttime calls, as well as adding a part-time position to help provide station coverage during those daytime hours to provide coverage for the full-time staff for sick time, vacation time, professional development. And we'll move on to the next slide. And so again, just the part-time line to provide daytime coverage. A couple years ago, we did do an EMS review. So we are working towards implementing some recommendations from that EMS review, including starting a emergency medical first responder program. We've hosted 2 EMT basic classes. So we've recently had 3 people finish one of those. We have our full-time firefighter, Matt Heath, is in a paramedic program. And our first class, we've had a couple of people finish that. And we have a handful of people who still need to test out in the next couple of months with that. So we're always looking for ways to work with our mutual aid partners to help provide a better service and to work better together. And we just, the more that we see fewer participation in activity, less participation in activity from our call firefighters, the more we need to start relying on full-time people. And in my mind, the best way to do that is to be working with other communities and to have us cross-trained to provide not only fire protection, but the ambulance service as well. The other big item in the budget is the capital budget is the replacement of the pickup that we have. The pickup truck that we currently use is a 2010 Chevy that was first saw service in the police department for several years. And we've been using it for, I think, about the last 8 years. And in September, we had to have some significant work done on the frame because of the amount of corrosion. And we've been told by the facility that fixed that frame that they're not going to be able to put another state inspection on it come September when this one's up. So we're proposing, depending on availability, to get the 2022 Ford Lightning, which is the electric vehicle. That's an all-electric vehicle. It's not the hybrid. And then chatting with the dealer over the last couple of weeks, it's hopefully going into production this summer. And so that's what our proposal is there. And the next slide, this was one from last year, planning for the future, and kind of, always been looking at trends in public safety and what we can do better, particularly knowing that we need to be relying more on working with our mutual aid partners and less on our on-call firefighters. That these guys are great. They do an awesome job. They come whenever they can, but their availability is impacted by today's lifestyles, and it's a real challenge to get people to come out to calls. And just some of the trends in public safety where we saw last week that the Kennebunk and Kennebunkport fire departments are just talking about forming a committee to do more together and to look at possibly merging those two departments. I tend to look at what's going on around New England. There are more fire departments getting into the ambulance service. And, I don't just look at the police department, at the fire departments. I look at what happens at police departments, and just, this Saturday in New Hampshire, the Alexandria and Danbury, those two towns are having a vote to merge their police departments. So we're seeing that more and more. And how did we start to look at that? Well, last summer we met with fire chiefs from Belfast to Waldoboro to talk about what our issues were and come up with some solutions. And out of that we ended up working more and more with Rockport and Rockland. So one of the things that we talked about last year in terms of planning for the future was the getting a mini pumper, which was approved by the budget committee and the voters. So that truck is currently in process. We're hoping to see it later this summer. I tried to get a more accurate date on when it might be delivered, but I wasn't able to get that this week. And the other thing that we're working on is I mentioned that we're having more events happening in the state park where we're going to have to help people. So we're working on a grant with Charlene, the manager at the state park, to get a grant through the Maine Outdoor Heritage Trust to get a UTV that we can work in the park to use in the park to use on some of those incidents. So I mentioned EMS, and this is kind of the next slide is one from last year as well. And just kind of the questions that we've asked about how we're delivering it. Do we continue to have a contract with Northeast? How long can they sustain their system? Do we work with the hospital? Do we work with just the 4 towns, or should we be looking on a larger scale and looking at communities who have similar service delivery expectations like Rockport and Rockland? It's not, the issue is not something we're going to resolve ourselves, and it's something that we need to work on together. And just the next slide is in seeing what's going on around. My thought is a collaborative approach to solving the issue of fewer personnel is the way to go. The state legislature is looking at it and looking to see what they were doing. I came across these two quotes by some state senators. The senator from Kennebunk saying, throughout my district, community leaders struggle with emergency services shortages. Services vary, but the volunteer, fire, and EMS system of the past do not meet the demands of today's world. And that's just what we're seeing. And then the next one, the senator from Belfast, for years, due to the stewardship, dedication, sacrifice of local leaders, most of us have no idea of the fragility of the system until it's at its breaking point. And we need to turn the tide now before the system breaks. And that's, kind of what I've been talking about for a bunch of years now, is that we need to be doing more and more together. This is not a Camden issue. It's not a Mid-Coast issue. It's a nationwide issue that we need to work together to resolve the issues. And the next slide, I'm not going to read that one, but out of that meeting, as I mentioned, that we had in late summer, Chief Wytalk and Rockland, Chief Peasley and Rockport, and myself have worked together to come up with a plan. We put together a budget that, it's a bit of a sticker shock because it requires hiring more full-time people, which in itself is going to be a problem. But we submitted that plan to our respective managers, and tomorrow morning, the three chiefs and the three managers are going to get together to go over that, to talk about how we can resolve some of these issues together. And that is about it for me. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Wow. Can you unshare? There we go. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I know that we've got a couple of questions coming up, so we're going to try to just get them right to you. Go ahead, Sarah. Looked like your hand was up.
Yep. And I think just Audrey, you said it's before we vote, right? That I have to do my relationship piece, and I think Andy's going to be coming up in a few minutes. Chris, you didn't want to miss the end of but not yet. I can ask questions without stating it, right?
You're free
Okay.
to ask questions. Yep.
Okay. So I guess there's two questions that I had, and I guess one of them, I wasn't sure, I was reading like within the insurances, I wasn't sure, is there a portion in the budget or is there coverage in the broader Camden town on disability or things for the volunteer fighters? Is there any kind of coverage if there's incident during calls? I wasn't sure where that's found or if that's how that plays into this budget or the broader Camden.
So any of I guess to answer your question, if one of the part-time call firefighters was hurt on the job, there would be covered by the town's workers' comp.
Okay, regardless of number of hours and okay, so it's the workers' comp.
Just like a volunteer out at the Snow Bowl. If you're a registered, if you've done all the paperwork, you're essentially an employee of the town as a volunteer.
Yeah, anyone on our payroll.
And then the second question I had in terms of budget for, because if I'm reading it correctly, for the volunteer fire, they're paid per call. So I was just curious, I was thinking, is it an all comers for every call as part of training, or are there tiered, if it's if it's a fire alarm, is it done in a tiered way or ever thought to be versus if all 16, I try to imagine if everybody showed up, which clearly that's not what you've relayed. Is there a way to tier that tied to the budget? Was a question.
Valid question.
Yeah.
And when I started here in 2008 and we had 36 call firefighters, and the line item for them for going to calls was $80,000. I've since dropped that down over the years based on people not, the fewer number of people. So it would make sense to have a tiered system if we had that many people. we don't have that many people. It's an all come. Yesterday morning, when the all come went out, I had 2 out of 16 answer the call. When we had the fatal fire on February 25th, I had 8 of the firefighters answer the call. We would not be able to do that without the mutual aid that we get from Rockport, Lincolnville, and Hope. None of us can do it. None of us.
So historically, the tiered that has been in the case in the past when it's appropriately filled, when the positions are filled, but right now it's as many as you can get. Okay, that's helpful. I didn't have that history, so thank you.
The call firefighters get paid for every call, every training meeting, and if there are special events or like we host the municipal voting. We need people to come in early in the morning and then in the evening to break down. So yes, they get paid for all of those events.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
All right.
I have
Go ahead,
a
Courtney.
question about the overtime part, and I read the little like extra blurb down here. So I'm just wondering if you could explain that. So it sounds like from what I read, and I might be misunderstanding. So there's the full-time positions and they work the 42 hours a week, but 2 hours of that are always overtime. But it doesn't sound like it's a salary position. It sounds like there could be more than 42 or there could be less than 42, but they always get paid for 42 with 2 of those being time and a half. I was just trying to understand that part.
So they work a 4 on 4 off 12-hour shift. So the time gets averaged over a period of weeks, so that they always get 40 hours of straight time and 2 hours overtime. So 1 week they might, based on the 12 hours, 1 week they might work 36 hours. The next week they might work 48. So it's just averaged. So they get 40 plus 2. And then they get, additional overtime for holidays and for any callbacks they come back to as well when they're off shift.
Thank you.
That was kind of, I'm glad you asked that, Courtney. I couldn't read that, but you just explained it. That was great. Thank you. Anybody else? I've got a couple of questions. What was that? Nancy, go ahead.
In the notes under full-time wages, it says this budget proposes to transition the assistant chief from hourly to salary. What's the advantage of doing that, Chris?
Well, Nancy, currently I'm the only salaried employee, and if we transition it to salaried, then Andrew and I can share the coverage.
I see. Okay, that explains it. Yeah.
So what we did during COVID was we split up so that Andrew and we tried to make it so that we were never in the building at the same time, so that if one of us got sick, the other one was going to be healthy.
Right.
Obviously, during incidents, we worked together, but we during the peak COVID time, we tried to avoid being in the building at the same time, just so we could both stay healthy.
Chris, we have interlocal. What are the levels of interlocal agreements we have with what towns?
Well, we have sometime in the 50s, the Knox County Mutual Aid Association was formed. So we have a mutual aid agreement with every town in Knox County, as well as Lincolnville signs on to that, and Waldoboro. And beyond that, there's a statewide mutual aid compact. So we could actually,
Okay. All right. I got it. Okay. All right. That was easy. Thank you.
Yep.
Nancy, go ahead.
I have one other question, and it doesn't necessarily have to do specifically with the fire department, but I see there's under the, again, under the notes, it says HB vaccine / drug screening. And what I wondered, and this is more perhaps something for Audra to answer, why is there no drug screening in the police department or other departments? Although it's also in public works, I noticed. Why just in these 2 departments?
we're
Are you
required,
notoriously drug addicts or what?
we're required to offer at initial hire vaccines to all of our personnel. And it says drug screening, but really that is, because of the vehicles that we drive, we are all in a pool to actually get drug tested. We randomly get called to go down to Health Connections to have a drug test.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it has to do with the type of equipment that
see.
Public
Okay.
Works as
That
well as the
makes
fire department operate.
Yeah. Okay. Just a curiosity.
Hey.
Oh, Sarah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I was actually just a different drug related question, but are the fire is the fire department also supplied with with Narcan, and so do you have it as part of your life safety equipment for calls, or is it just the PD?
That program I think was offered to the PD, and Randy actually extended it to us. So we took that training with them, and we do have several doses of slightly outdated Narcan on the truck.
I was just
But
curious.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else? Welcome, Andrew. Any other questions, comments? Just a reminder, so this is a $661,000 budget package. But it's a little, it's hard to look at as it says fire and rescue, but the 661 is just fire. Is that correct, Chris?
But it encompasses the services that we provide. So yeah, fire and rescue, because it encompasses, the motor vehicle accidents, the incidents at the state
Right.
park where we're helping. Yep.
Yep, okay. But we're only voting on the 661 because the other parts of your department, of the public safety department, emergency medical service, and the operations center are on another page and we're going to vote those too. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions? Do I have a motion? Sarah,
Do-
go
I-
ahead.
I was-
Go
go ahead, Sarah.
I was just gonna say, before we make a motion to vote and before Courtney's question, do we want to maybe do Courtney's question first and then we call a vote to see if you guys want us to recuse ourselves from voting? I just want to make sure that happens before we vote. So I don't know if you want to
Does everyone understand that Andrew Skoranovich is employed currently as a trainee, as a student in the fire department? Is that correct, Andrew?
Correct.
So he's a beneficiary. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I get where you're concerned there, but historically there have been members of the fire department who have served on the budget committee as well as the select board. They voted on the budget. Courtney's dad works for the police department.
Right. Okay. Oh,
It's a small town.
This is good. This is good.
Right.
We have to have a little bit of honesty here.
So does anyone, if anyone has a problem with them voting on this budget part, please put up your hand. Speak up. It does not look like anyone has a problem. So we'll take that as an affirmative and we'll put that in the notes and we'll
Great.
go forward. Thank you. So do we have a motion?
Can I just, I'm wondering
Go on.
if with gas prices and stuff going up, and I'm not sure when this whole thing was actually created, but I know it's just seems to be rising. And so I didn't know if maybe we should increase that a little bit. I mean, if we do go over, how would that, if that does go over budget, what would happen with that? But I just know like gas prices are crazy right now.
Well, that would be Mr. Farley's problem if it
We'll
goes
have to-
over.
Right.
So how would the town handle that, Audra, if there were a huge increase and this would affect the police department too, wouldn't it? And public works. How is that handled?
So if, we kind of, because, like with any budget, it's just a best guess at a point in time. They would have to cut back on other expenditures and make room for the increase in fuel prices.
There's no kind of contingency or rainy day fund or anything you could draw on for that.
Oh,
Well, I
there
mean,
are.
we do carry forward a lot of balances, which is
Uh-huh.
not always the greatest practice in terms of accounting, but it does leave them with some additional flexibility with their budgets. And the way that our budgeting works is that we don't have to come in, we can go over on certain line items as long as the bottom line budget isn't exceeded.
Hmm.
But I think it's something that, as we go through that, because we do this so far in advance of, when the financial year begins, that, I think it's something we're going to have to look at as we're going through this, and, when the select board reviews it, because, it's just so volatile right now.
Mm.
Do we have a motion? You want to change that item, Courtney?
I guess I was more of just, I wasn't trying to make a motion to change it. It was just more of trying to understand, or I guess ask if that's something, and Nancy really said it too, like was there a surplus or something that if they do go over, and I was not aware that they would have to cut back on other things in order to make up for that difference. But like Audra said, if the select board will, revisit this, and if they, at that point, if it's still increasing and it's kind of creeping up even closer, they can change it, if I understand that correctly. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Clearly,
Okay.
these are departments that we want to be able to have those fire trucks rushing out when we need them, and the police trucks rushing out, and the public works department plowing the streets when we need them. So if gas goes up to $5 a gallon, we'll just have to bite the bullet somehow and deal with it.
Leisha,
We'll still be there, Nancy.
Good. Thank you.
I move that we accept the town manager's proposed budget for the fire and rescue department of $661,700.
thank you. We have a
Second. the motion.
second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that takes care of that. Thank you. Thank you all. So over to the, would just to the public safety building, what would you like to do next? What is proper to do next?
The next on the list is public safety and hydrant rental, and I think what those can probably be dealt with very quickly. Public safety building and hydrant rental.
And Chief Farley,
Audra,
he prepares
yeah.
the budget for the public safety building. So we can just sort of roll right into that if that's okay with everyone.
Can I ask, before we get started, Chris and Audra, are we looking at capital improvements in the public safety building this year?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Chris. You want to tell us anything about the building?
Yeah, this is just, what it takes to run the building in the course of the year. It's been 20 years. The building was renovated in 2003 when the police department moved down, and it is going to be time to start to look at, some long-term maintenance things there, painting on the outside of the building, some floors that get worn over time that eventually we're going to have to take a look at doing some more in the building. I think the biggest increase on this budget is just on the HVAC maintenance, and that comes with the new Siemens contract.
Does that include heat? That HVAC?
Yes, yep.
It does. Okay.
So explain that one more time, Chris. So Siemens came in there, what, 2 years ago now?
I think it was last
So is it a year-
spring,
is it a year?
summer they replaced, yes. And so the biggest part is just the contract services for them to provide the annual maintenance on it, on the HVAC systems.
Any question? Any other question? Nancy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just wondered what the heating system is in the building.
There is a oil burner that provides radiant floor over in the office side. There are Modine heaters that hang from the ceiling over in the apparatus bay. And what the Siemens project did was replaced the air conditioners with heat pumps. So we have heat pumps throughout the office side of the building. So hopefully, we're relying less on the
Right.
boiler, and we'll be able to turn hopefully the boiler off during the summer months.
Good. Excellent. Hydrant assessment, I mean, that seems to be something we're kind of stuck with, aren't we? We don't,
Yeah, and I actually have an update on this.
okay.
So do you want to vote before we go to hydrant assessment? Do you want to?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's, okay, do we have a motion?
Sure, I move we accept the town manager's budget of $49,385 for the public safety building.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussions? Any questions? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. The fire hydrant assessment. Barry? Go ahead. Who wants to explain, who wants to explain that?
Yeah, I can do this. So
Thank you.
in the time between when I prepare, so the fire hydrant assessment, the purpose of this is the water service that goes to all the hydrants that the fire department needs for fire suppression that are within the hydrant district. And so between when when we published the budget and when you had your first meeting, I think it was actually the afternoon of your first meeting, I had a meeting with Maine Water where they informed me that there was going to be a 3.4% rate increase this year. And it would impact our budget by a difference of, I think I had down 258,000 for the assessment. And when I factored in their rate increase, it's 263,890.
So is that the new number, Audra?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Does that make sense? Does everybody? Sarah, go ahead.
Is it based on like how much water we use for fires, or like, is it just like for the right to have access to, is it like a right of way passage or what?
Yeah, it's more of, they just assess a general rate to the entire system. And increases are based on their rate increases, which are approved through the Public Utilities Commission.
And so Rockport has their own set of hydrants and they deal with Maine Water. They're charged X. Yeah.
How many hydrants do we have? Does anyone know?
We have 115 hydrants, and it's basically paying for the ability to use the water. And I always have to throw out there that this is offset. So if you're living inside the hydrant district, your house insurance premium is lower because that water is there.
Interesting.
Sarah?
So, and maybe I'm asking the same question now a different way. So if there's, maybe hopefully one day or 1 year of where there's never a hydrant that is needed to be used, this remains.
The, the,
Yeah.
the legislature permits the water company to generate some of the revenue from the hydrants. Yes, so it remains, yeah.
The
But-
same rate as Rockport?
So we all pay the same rate, but I think their hydrant district's smaller, so it would be less
Right.
cost to them.
So do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we accept the town manager's budget of $258,000 for hydrant assessment.
Can we amend that, Nancy? Because
Amended- I'm
it's
sorry, yes.
258,
The amended
263.
budget
Yeah,
For $262,890. Sorry, that's what I should have said.
I think she said 263.
Yeah,
That what
260.
you said? Okay, all right.
It's okay, it's all right.
I move that we accept the town manager's amended budget of $263,890 for hydrant assessment.
That's awesome. Yep. Any second?
I
Okay.
second that.
Any discussion?
Okay,
All those
one
in
last
favor?
quick
Whoop.
one. Sorry, I
Okay,
know,
go
don't
ahead.
kill me.
It's all right.
And now
Go
I have
ahead.
Andy's
Go
gonna
ahead.
heckle me. My last question is like, for hydrant placements, because I have no idea where these hydrants of 100+ are they like strategically placed throughout Camden to like disperse or?
They're in the water district. So
Okay,
we're
fine,
on-
all
we're
right.
on- we're
They're
on-
all collected at the yacht club, Sarah.
I'm like, I'm gonna go around counting hydrants tomorrow. I'm curious.
Wow, you got to get out more. You got to really get out more.
All right, I will take it offline. I'm
All right,
sorry,
that's
thank
fine.
you.
Thank you.
Well, so
Thank you.
Sarah, just to answer your question though, if the water company is doing some work, they'll typically consult with us to find out if they want us to move a hydrant or if they should add a hydrant or what have you.
That's interesting. That's good. That's collaboration. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Next. So I'm a little concerned, Audra, that we're going to get to Mr. St. Lawrence department and we're not going to get a chance to get to the capital reserves and
Again,
improvements.
right. Yeah.
Again, does that, I just don't see it happening. Tell me I'm wrong.
It might not happen time-wise, but I think that, you know, given what the schedule looks like over the coming weeks, you know, you can always move those discussions to another date where there's less presentations scheduled.
Okay, all right. Does that, okay, thank you. So next on the list, Mr. Farley, your turn again. EMS, Emergency Medical Services.
So this, the biggest part of this is the contract with Northeast Mobile Health to provide the ambulance service for Camden for ourselves, which, you know, we're in a contract together along with Rockport, Lincolnville, and Hope.
And I have a update on that one as well, because again, more information came in after we had prepared the budget.
So what is that number, Audra?
So the new number for Camden is 175,500.
Does everybody understand that now is the quote? That's the charge from Northeast Medical to run ambulances when we get calls.
Compared to the 195 that was in our book. Is that
Right,
right?
150, yep, was 155, now it's 175,500. All right, so.
Oh,
and-
you're
and
saying
now
that
it's-
was just for the EMS. It's not the total, or is
It's
it
line
just
i-
for
it's
the
line-
line
it's
2805?
Oh, just 155. Got it. It's not the
28
total.
2805, right.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
go ahead, Mr. Farley, we've kind of mucked up your presentation.
No, I mean, that's the bulk of it, is the contract with Northeast. And then, you know, that some of this is here to start to implement a first responder program, which ideally we would be doing that with Rockport, Lincolnville, and Hope. I'm not seeing much activity there to do that, and but we're continuing to try and get our folks the training that we need to do that.
Can I ask just a technical question? What you just said?
Sure.
Realistically, how many years do you think, if you could look down 3 years from now, do you think you will have the human capacity, the human resources that could possibly set up your own region? No, not your own, our own regional emergency medical system?
So the challenge is always going to be the human resources.
And money. What about, and the money?
And the political will to do it with other communities.
All right. Good.
That's always the biggest hurdle. The political will to do it with other communities. Yes.
But we have we have a working relationship with a vendor, Northeast, and that have just like any other vendor that we work with, has had, if I'm not mistaken, because I went to a lecture that you put on a couple of years ago, they had some real failings in their service ability. Is that correct?
They had some operational challenges over the years. Yes.
Okay. And you were tasked, and this group was tasked to ask them to improve. Is that correct?
I think that's happened. I think that one of the things that we asked them to do was, one of the problems that we noticed was a lack of consistent leadership here at the Rockport base where they provide service. And I think that was one of the things that Audra and others worked to put in the contract, was that they provide leadership here at the Rockport base. And I think that's happened, and we're not seeing as many operational issues as we were.
Terrific.
Yeah, because they're based in southern Maine, they kind of, I'm not going to say they focused their recruitment efforts down there, but they certainly had more well-staffed crews in their southern Maine bases. And Rockport always sort of struggled to attract and retain enough staff to cover, their sort of 911 as well as hospital responsibilities. But a lot of the increase that you're seeing is they're really aggressively increasing their wages and benefits that they're offering to the staff at the Rockport base, so that they can keep that area, that particular base staffed well. And a lot of it is in response to, what's going on in the surrounding communities. Rockland, they had to, significantly increase their compensation for their, fire EMS personnel. And that's happening in a lot of different agencies in Knox County. And it put pressure on Northeast to also increase what they were providing as compensation.
Would it, Audra, this I guess is a technical question for you. And for the rest of the budget committee, try to think about this for a long term. If we're trying to create a regional EMS system, Mr. Farley, right? Would you call that a regional system, Chris?
I'd like to use the word collaboration, but yes, Peter, you boil it down, it's a regional system.
And we are already in a regional system with Camden, Rockport, Lincolnville, and Hope.
Yep.
So would it make sense for us? Would we get a better price if we went to Northeast and said, what is it going to take? What would you charge us instead of 175 per year? What if we went out for 3 years and committed to them for 3 years to give Mr. Farley time to work on this first responder program that's going to take time? Would we get a better break, Audra, from Northeast?
That was, that was discussed when we met with them recently. And I think that it would be very marginal given some of the staffing issues that they're grappling with and what their needs are currently. Okay. So I don't think it would move that number enough.
Much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Go ahead, Nancy.
As I understand it, what you're talking about is a regional emergency response system as opposed to a town of Camden emergency response system. Is that correct? Or did I mishear you?
I think you're correct, Nancy. I would call it a district, right? And it could be Camden, Rockport, Rockland. It could eventually expand to more than that. But I think that we need to seriously start looking at, it being a combined service, fire and ambulance. So you're having cross-trained personnel. You're using the same people to provide both service, just like they do in Rockland, and to do it with more communities. So it's a larger district that you're providing the coverage for. And like I said, Chief Whitetalk in Rockland, Chief Peasley in Rockport, we've kind of put together a plan to do that. It works in other places. I look at what they do in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I realize Halifax is a much bigger place, but they have an amalgamation. They provide coverage over multiple counties and 65 stations over many municipalities. I think that's a direction that we should be striving at. And like I said, that's what Kennebunk and Kennebunkport just tried to put together a committee last week to try and do the same thing. I think that's the direction we should be heading in. Yes.
And
I absolutely think it's the direction we should be heading for all kinds of things that, looking ahead 10 or 15 years down the road, I see all of these communities facing similar problems. And was it Ben Franklin who said, in unity there is strength? I can't remember. Somebody like that said that. The more we can work together, the stronger we will be, and the more benefit we'll give to all of our citizens up and down the mid-coast and the islands and everywhere else. So I would think that was an appropriate thing to be doing.
Yeah, we've got a really interesting situation in Knox County where we've got this sort of patchwork quilt of different EMS agencies, and Rockland, where you have a professional fire-based EMS agency that covers certain towns with certain things, and some volunteer services out on the peninsulas, and other municipally based services like in Union, and then the 4 communities that have Northeast covering them. So it's just this weird patchwork quilt. And just like with fire services, we do rely on one another to provide mutual aid in a lot of circumstances. And, there's very few people going into the EMS profession because it's incredibly low paying and you have to be incredibly highly skilled to do those jobs. So, we're really at a position where, any domino could fall that kind of makes our whole system ineffective and not function properly. So, there's a real need to sort of look at this holistically. Our fate is very much tied to that of the hospital, because Northeast, their ability to operate within our communities, they're only financially sustainable if they have that contract to do interfacility transfers with the hospital as well. So it's very complicated. It's very fragile. And, it's because of that, even though we've been looking at it over the past few years, there isn't really like a clear solution that isn't going to require a lot of, public input and understanding of how it all kind of ties together and how it could all easily fall apart. So, I really appreciate all the work that, Chief Farley and his colleagues in the other communities are doing, because it's complicated. It's hard to work together at the best of times. And, it's under a lot of stress right now, given, the shortage of personnel all over the state. But it's really something that, we're all going to have to pay attention to, especially in the coming years, because it's only getting, more difficult and more expensive for communities.
Wow, thank you, Audra. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I'm sorry, Courtney. Go ahead, Courtney.
Okay. I was hoping that Chief Farley could give a little bit of history, a little history lesson, because I remember Camden had their own EMS, and then we switched it over to the Northeast. But I'm curious if this was ever to do the collaboration, if that was ever talked about back then before we switched to the contract with the Northeast. And, if so, or if not, what are some things that might have been talked about and discussed, and what is different this time than, when we closed down the Camden ambulance that was, years ago. Just curious.
Wow.
Well, Courtney, Audra wasn't here then, 2013. Nobody ever asked me in 2013 when Camden First Aid was on their way out, what I thought we might do, because I would have suggested that we do something collaborative with other communities. I think the concern at the time was it was going to cost too much. And, the reality is we're going to have to hire more people to provide the service, and it is going to cost more. Communities have been getting fire protection at a pretty good deal for many, many years. And it's just coming at a point where the generations old model of people coming out when the siren went off or the church bell went off, or those days are gone. There's just a few people doing it. So I guess to answer your question, if I had been asked back in 2013 what I thought we should have done, I would have said we should have collaborated with other communities to try and do this. Here we are almost 10 years later, and still grappling with the issue.
Sort of a follow-up question. Do you think that there will still be, considering their Northeast is having a problem, and maybe, like you said, it's just up here being Rockport, and they were, and that has been discussed, but do you think that it will be just as difficult to try to find good, knowledgeable EMS people to, that are qualified to be able to do that for those towns? Because I know, I mean, I think about the bus situation that, they're thinking about sort of using a vendor for the buses for the town. And, it seems everywhere is just having a shortage. And so I was just something that my brain was thinking about.
Yeah, I think it's a statewide and federal issue when it comes to EMS personnel. Just the way that it's evolved and it's been funded over the years, and changes that have been made to how that system is reimbursed. Too much of the responsibility for that right now falls on taxpayers, or is going to have to fall on taxpayers to fix it so that they're compensated at a level where people want to enter that profession because they're being financially compensated in the way that they need to be to reflect the amount of training that they need to have for those jobs. And that, on a local level, we're going to have to pay more for EMS services, but this is something that we, really state legislatures and on a federal level, they need to fix it because it's truly broken. It's a broken system, and it's not sustainable the way it is. We're lucky it hasn't fallen over sooner. But just like with so many other industries, the pandemic has really stressed it to a point of breaking.
Sarah.
Just a quick question, and maybe it's old news, but the 1 versus 3 year contract, is Northeast Mobile, like, are they the monopoly? Are they the only show in town? That's it? You get an N of 1 choice?
Yeah,
Okay.
so for private sector providers, because of that contract that they have with Penn Bay Hospital, really we have tied our fates to them until we make another decision to do something else.
So there's no reason for them to have any, we'll give you a deal on 3 years, because they don't need to.
They don't need to. And also, we really financially benefit from the fact that it's really a shared service between the hospitals and our 4 communities. But the flip side of that is the level of service that we get and the level of control we have over that service. So because it's a shared service, they can't always guarantee that there's going to be, an ambulance or enough ambulances available for incidents that occur within our communities, because maybe they have a busy day at the hospital where they need to move patients, from the emergency room to other places. So, that could create a shortage where we're not covered and we have to rely on our mutual aid partners in other towns to cover calls in Camden or Rockport or the other communities. So that's sort of that's the downside of us paying so little for the service that we have. So yeah, that's always been sort of the trade-off. And we knew it when we entered that agreement with them back in 2013, is that, we're getting what we pay for.
And that's a great way to put it. But I would ask Audra and Chris, and we could possibly get moving on this, is that if this is going to be something that the town wants to do, the voters and then the select board, then I think it would help all of us to see this plan that we're talking about. It's just now in abstract forms. I think it would really help to see it published as a 5-year plan and have it actually spelled out and actually show the public what it costs to produce a real ambulance service and really paid staff. And that way they know that, oh my God, that's $18 million or that's $14 million.
Yeah, so that's sort of the next part that Chris Farley and his colleagues are working on is really building that that straw man system of what it would look like if it were to be done across multiple other municipalities in Knox County.
It would probably help. Any other discussion or is this clear to everybody? This 195? Oh no, wait a minute. So we've got to up it.
The total would be 216,310.
Thank you. Is that clear to everybody? Do we have a motion?
I move we accept the town manager's budget for emergency medical services of, what was it, Audra?
216,310.
$216,310.
I'll second. Oh,
Thank you. Discussions? Questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Wendy, were you opposed or are you affirmative?
No, I was for. I was going to encourage Chris to keep up the good fight, please.
Oh, thank you. Okay, on to the street light.
May I say that we are getting very close to 9 o'clock.
We could do street light. Oh, come on.
Yeah, we can certainly do street lights.
These are Audra's street lights.
Right, and look at the diminished cost of them from FY19. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, so street light.
way to go, Audra.
Sorry. They're not really hers.
Thank goodness they're not really mine.
She's out there changing those bulbs.
Well,
No, that's Dave St. Laurent.
yeah,
So just a little background on streetlights. Camden currently owns all the streetlights across the municipality. We bought hours out from CMP, who we used to lease them from. So the huge number that you see back in FY19, that steadily decreased because we're no longer paying a lease fee to CMP for those streetlights because we own them outright now. So part of that process of owning our own streetlights was also converting them over to LED lights, which also cut down on electricity costs. So that's sort of brought us to where we are today. We did have higher actuals in FY22. It was, sort of the first full year of the new lights being in, and, just certain issues around the installation of the new lights and certain things that, needed to be fixed because they had been installed, and, you notice issues with certain ones going out here and there. However, we're anticipating that cost is going to go down in the coming year because a lot of those, sort of initial issues have been resolved.
Thank you.
Question. Why is there such a difference between traffic signal maintenance? It was budgeted for 1,900, and the department head wants 1,900, and the town manager wants 3,000. Why is that?
So it's one of those things where it's a pretty, we've had more problems with, traffic signals and, bunch of electrical issues. So I just wanted to make sure that there was plenty of, buffer in there in case we kept experiencing those issues into this financial year.
So what traffic signals is the town responsible for?
Oh.
Like the one at the 2, 3, one at Hannaford's? Is that the state?
Hannaford, Union Street, and Mountain Street.
Where?
Main Street, High Street.
Oh, right, by the library.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Nancy, it's only really, it's $1,000 difference.
I know, I realized that.
No, I mean, my God.
Curious about
Jeepers
why,
creepers.
it was,
That's so fine.
it's twice as, it's
Yeah,
half
you're
again
right,
as
you're
much
right.
or something like that. I don't know what exactly, but.
I can explain
Yeah.
that a little bit. So, for example, like the Hannaford street light,
Yeah.
somebody hit that, and we have $1,000 deductible. It doesn't take long before you have to go and spend $2,000 or $3,000 fixing the light when it gets hit by a tractor trailer and nobody sees it. So you just don't really ever know, and that just happened. And then we had some electrical problems, like Audra said, at the Union Street one, and it doesn't take much to add cost into fixing those.
But we're not responsible for the light at Washington Street and Mechanic Street at that intersection? We are, aren't we? I would think so.
The RFB, Dave.
Oh yeah, but that's just something I would take care of internally within my budget. The crosswalk light you're talking about?
Well, it's there's not a light there anymore.
No, there's no light where you're talking.
God,
Yeah.
I'm going back a very long way. I'm sorry.
You had me second guessing myself. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I still think that it used to be
Okay.
the red, yellow, and green light in town, and it disappeared many years ago. But I still think, I still call French and Brown Carlton French's. So that's I'm dwelling in the past.
Yes. Any other discussion? Do we have a motion?
Well, I will move to accept the town manager's streetlight budget of $28,000.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, any questions, problems? Leisha?
Do we have to approve the $500 above that?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, the Emergency Operations Center. We'll get to that in a second. Hang on.
Okay.
Thank you. So any other discussion on the streetlight item that's on the floor? All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. So real quickly, is Mr. Farley still with us?
Yes.
Could you just give us the real quick rundown on the Emergency Operations Center, please?
So the Emergency Operations Center is basically our emergency management. It's kind of our go-to place if an event happens in town, flooding, a significant weather event that all the department heads need to get together with Hydra and kind of run things from there, as well as we're working with, because we have so many incidents in the state park, we're working with the manager at the state park to develop a small emergency operations center there at the park. They recently got one of the log cabins from Point Lookout, which they're going to build an education center there next to the toll booth, and we're working with them to use that as an EOC for events in the park.
That's great.
So we're
Thank you.
get a nice map in there so we can coordinate responses there.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Does that make sense to everybody? We have a motion. Okay.
Okay. I move that we accept the $500 recommended by the town manager for the Emergency Operations Center.
A
Thank
second
you.
motion.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Discussion. Don't think we need a whole lot of discussion, but there may be some. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to ask politely that we do go through the Public Works Department, Nancy, and we're going to do it very quickly and succinctly because Mr. St. Laurent is a very skilled orator and he does have some capital, large, expensive items that he's got planned for, but we don't need to get into those tonight. Mr. St. Laurent, take it away.
Thank you, Peter. I just want to say good evening to the members of the board, the public, and the select board that are watching. I have a quick presentation I'll go through here. Let's see. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so the Public Works Department has 10 employees. It has a director, an assistant director, 6 staff members, and 2 mechanics. We're responsible for snow and ice control, the picking up of all of the trash receptacles around town and in the parks, road maintenance, shouldering, ditching, paving, sweeping, brush and tree removal, a lot of which is generated by winter maintenance of putting sand and salt down. We also are in charge of stormwater maintenance, structure and repair, cleaning, culvert replacement, and a lot of that is also the maintenance is generated by snow and ice control by putting sand on the streets. We repair the town fleet from the other departments as well as ours. To a certain extent, anything that's a little bit more in depth, like engine repair and those types of things, are sent out. But we do most of the maintenance, and as well as on the equipment and on the fuel depot and maintenance for that also. We assist the other departments, like the smaller departments, like the harbor, town hall, and the snow bowl, and we are responsible for the townwide infrastructure project management. In fiscal year 2022, the department had 0 OSHA recordable injuries thus far. So we're responsible for the maintenance of 160 roads. That equates to 58 centerline miles and 148 roads and 38 miles are town-owned, and 12 roads and 20 miles are state aid. I'm just going to review real quickly what we kind of accomplished. So we paved Mount Batty, Harrison, Cobb, from Cobb Hill to 105, Stonehurst, and Jacobs Avenue South. I think somebody lives on Harrison, so they got to see a full reconstruction of the road. I want to really go over briefly the Siemens project. So that the town had a vote on January 26, 2021 to invest in some capital improvements through a performance contract with Siemens, which was to upgrade a lot of the energy systems within the town. That was going to guarantee cost savings. So what that consisted of was some HVAC system installation, replacement, as well as some building envelope work, installation building envelope work, and lighting. And there was also some air purification devices that were installed, and those were installed in the Opera House and at the library. And one of those systems is kind of neat. It was called an H2 prime. So if you're in the French conference room, that has actually an H2 prime or an O2 prime system in it, in the HVAC system that kills virus and mold spores and bacteria. The iron steal away the hydrogen from the pathogens, rendering them dead. So it's kind of neat with the COVID thing that we have that installed. The library had a lot of control systems that were replaced, the lighting, building automations, building envelope, and the H2 prime, as I said earlier. There's the photos here, the two new propane boilers and the new 2 tanks and some of the controls. The public safety building had one single zone ductless mini split heat pump installed for the pumper showcase, replaced several cooling condensers, seven heating cooling heat pumps, 7 air handling units, and 7 new heating and cooling thermostats. In the next budget year, we're going to be installing a new hot water heat pump to take the hot water off the boiler so we can completely shut the boiler down in the summertime. So we'll be running into 2 modes. We'll be running in complete heat pump mode in the summer with no boiler operation. And then in the wintertime, we switch over to the winter mode where we run the boiler and heat with radiant floor heating and supplement that with a little bit of heat pump. So there should be any energy savings there. Sorry about that. So at the Snow Bowl, we did building lighting, LED lighting, trail lighting, which was a big upgrade. So all the lighting was changed to LED. Building envelope was done there. And then there was an HVAC geothermal system installed, and we repaved the entrance. Over here, you can see the geothermal on that second photo in front of the where the trenched out area is. It's a closed loop system that goes into a series of 5 wells. The piping, you can see how the 2 pipes go down into the well. It basically just loops down into the water, and the differential between the temperature of the groundwater and the temperature of the building is where the heat is extracted from, and that's where the energy comes from. And the slide to the right, you can see the duct work coming off of the 2 HVAC units on heat pumps that are above. There's actually 3 heat pumps that are above the office area that are supplying that heat. We did some drainage work on Park Street, right on the corner of Mechanic and Park. And actually, that was Mechanic and Oak, sorry. And that whole lot on the corner was kind of subsiding from all of the water from up above rushing down and basically flooding that area. So we installed new drainage all the way around the corner of that lot, which really improved that lot. Drainage is one of the biggest problems we have in town. So, you know, we live between the mountain and the sea. Water just wants to make it from the high point to the low point, and it moves real quickly from that high point to the low point. And with the increase in frequency in storms and higher intensity of storms, it's becoming more and more a problem. One of the big things that we did this year was we set up a contract, and that's why you'll see one of the line items in the budget that increased significantly, was because we wanted to go and clean. We have 718 catch basins around town. Catch basin is kind of a pollution control device. So the catch basins are, people think sometimes they call them manholes. They're really catch basins and manholes. Catch basins collect stormwater. Stormwater runs across the street. Usually it will go into a grate. It will go into the catch basin. Catch basin has a sump. It collects the solids. It keeps the solids from moving through the system. And then as it moves through the system, it eventually reaches a discharge point, or an outfall, they call it, which then goes into the river or the harbor. If the catch basins build up with sediment, it no longer works as a pollution control device. The sediment will then be transported through the collection system and then end up in the harbor or in the river. So it's important that these things are maintained and cleaned. And if you don't maintain them and clean them, they eventually fill up, and then you have flooding. So it's kind of an important task that needs to be taken care of and can't be neglected. What we did along with that is we developed and put in all this into a GIS database that's online on the town's website. So we looked at every one of these that were cleaned. We took pictures of them. We identified the ones that needed to be repaired or fixed, which help us planning for infrastructure repair. And then what we also did is, that's our baseline. So when we go do it the next year, we'll know when we have to do it again. Then we can budget for the ones that become fuller more quickly. Probably some people have seen the Mechanic Street parking lot. There was this derelict boardwalk that was kind of barricaded off. You couldn't walk on it anymore. We disassembled it. We straightened it all out. We rebuilt the framing, we redecked it, and we painted it. And it looks, I think, pretty good. We did a really good job with that. I'm pretty proud of the guys that worked on that. Some of the sidewalks and crosswalks that we worked on this year is we did Washington Street, Knowlton Street, Lyons Lane, Union Street, the crosswalk with we did the rectangular rapid flashing beacon on Mechanic Street, and then we ground and restriped all the crosswalks on Main Street. This is just a couple photos of the rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So that was kind of a project that the school wanted, because there was actually a student that was crossing Mechanic Street and was hit by a car. The principal had requested, you know, for some time, so actually many years, to have some type of attention grabbing device so that kids could cross the street there safely. So we actually got this through a program through Maine Local Roads, and we installed it, and now we fixed the tip downs on both sides so they were ADA compliant. People can push the button, the lights flash, the people driving by are aware kids crossing, and it's much safer. These are more photos of the sidewalks that we fixed on Knowlton Street and on Mechanic Street. This is a photo of this was part of a program where we were trying to work with a pervious pavement for stormwater control in the alleyway by Sea Dogs. So as you can see, we're installing the walkway right there, and that's a type of material that allows the water to move through it. So what it does is it allows the water to kind of move through and then get into a drainage system that's below it, as opposed to it just running across the surface of the top real quickly and then washing down into the public landing. It works well, other than when you have these giant rainstorms, then it no longer can keep up with it. But it was part of a program we did with the Northern New England Concrete Association and Ferriello Construction, and they donated all the materials, and we actually got a lot of the tools to help us from the Northern New England Concrete Association. People have probably seen that we planted some trees, some street trees on the corner of Chestnut and on the corner of Mechanic, kind of beautify and help with the canopy in the downtown. We also developed a program. I think actually Nancy was one of the people that had her stump ground in her yard. But what we tried to do was we're trying to replenish the stock and inventory of trees and tree canopy in town by grinding out the stumps that were removed. I mean, where the trees were removed, and then replacing and putting a tree back in its place. So we started that program. One of the other things we did on Mechanic Street is, as a traffic calming measure, we put some fog lines on the side to narrow the travel lane. And then we also put some bicycle sharrows in the road for public awareness of bicycle safety, and to let people know that, you know, bicycles do have the right to be in the road, and to be aware of that. This was also part of an ongoing improvements we did at the Opera House. So we did a lot of repointing work. There was a lot of water intrusion that was happening from the port. The gutters were rotted out and the roof line was, you know, leaking, but also the interface between the building wall and the area around was allowing the water, and the gutters were just going straight into the ground, following the basement wall and then going into the basement, keeping the basement damp, which then just kind of wicks up through the whole building. So we installed, you know, a new drainage along the side, tied the gutters in, brought it properly, installed it into the stormwater system, reseeded and grassed the area. We continue working on the stormwater mapping system that we had talked about last year. So we've inventoried, you know, all of our stormwater catch basins, and then we go through with a GPS device, you know, and make sure that they're where they are. And if we find new ones, we capture them on the GIS, we take a photo of them, and we make sure that they're connected and we know where they go. So we can basically, we're trying to be able to track a drop of water from one point into where it outfalls into either the river or the ocean. This is probably, you know, the biggest part of the budget that you guys are, you know, really want to look at in terms of changes in my budget. So of course, you know, I consolidated all right here. Full-time wages and part-time wages has gone up because of the COLA. I actually added a part-time $1,000, or actually $11,000 for a part-time help, I'll say. And what that is that's to help this in the wintertime. So what happens in the wintertime is when we're out plowing and taking care of the roads, we get to a point where we're just so short-staffed that we don't have any time left to take care of some of the sidewalk stuff, because people have been working 25 hours straight. And what ends up happening is the sidewalks then end up getting neglected because they're the last thing that needs to be done in a snowstorm. So I don't know if anybody's aware, but you know, when we plow the streets, we throw the snow in the sidewalk. And it's just this battle of throwing it out of the sidewalk and back into the sidewalk. So it's always best to kind of wait for the storm to be over and then take care of the sidewalks. But unfortunately, by the time we're done the road work, when a storm lasts really long, we don't have any people left to do the sidewalks. So this is kind of help supplement that, and also help with summer projects for flagging. Of course, there's the associated with FICA and ICMA. There is a slight increase, a $300 increase in safety equipment. Building maintenance increased a little bit. And some of that is for some storage tanks for waste oil, for our waste oil furnace. The fuel depot maintenance you'll see has decreased. That's because that $11,000 was put in the budget for an inspection of the fuel depot. Fuel depot's aged. We're still in this year's budget. We haven't done this part yet, but we need to drain the tanks, inspect the inside, determine whether or not it's feasible to continue with a fuel depot. We've investigated looking at a maritime farm type of model where we don't try and manage a fuel depot anymore. We try to just get cards, and then people would go to maritime farm and use maritime farm. It's right down the road. Then we wouldn't have to put in any capital infrastructure cost into the fuel depot. But that decision hasn't been made just yet. Small equipment went up slightly, and that's based on, in the budget, I've outlined the small items that we want to purchase. Storm sewer, that represents the $40,000 roughly to do the catch basins that I explained earlier in the budget. Engineering, there's a slight increase in engineering for projects that we're going to be working on Gould Street and Pearl Street. Parking lot maintenance went down slightly because we don't plan on doing any more boardwalk work. And the shade tree planting program, we're looking at increasing that by $10,000, and that is tied to a goal of planting 50 street trees within the town and right away to help with our canopy, reduce, the island effect and heating. And we probably will never see the results of this, but I'm sure our children will. And that's what this effort is for. Plan resurfacing, we're going to be attempting to do Pearl Street, Free Street, Gould Street, Park Street. We're going to do a partial resurfacing at the beginning. And then for sidewalks, we're going to be doing Knowlton Street. We're going to be doing Washington Street from Knowlton Street just past the tannery. And then we're going to be doing Washington Street from Elm to Mechanic. And then we're going to be I'm going to try and fit in the sidewalk on Central Street from Trim to Cross, which is in really poor shape. I outlined my goals and objectives from last year. And as you can see, I accomplished quite a few of them. The ones in blue are not completed, but they're in progress and on their way to being done. So I like to keep a spotlight on the things that I say I'm going to do. And then I like to see them all in orange eventually. And that's what I'll do. I will continue to keep these slides up until these things are done. I can go through them. You probably have already read them. These are my goals for next year. I can go through those if you'd like, or we can assume that you've already read those also. Crosswalks improvements. There's a series of crosswalks from basically Rennie's to Free Street, and they're all in poor shape. All of the tip downs or the configuration of the crosswalk is like in such poor shape that anybody that had a disability would have a hard time crossing, and they're also dangerous. So I brought these up to the state, and as part of our Heads Up Safety program, we were awarded a grant. The grant is also moved to the next level where it's been engineered out, and all of these engineered improvements have been put into the main DOT work plan. And we will be working on improving all those crosswalks over the next 2 years. This is just an outline of the work plan and the drawings of it. Then I just want to talk a little bit about stormwater and the storm of October 31st, 2021. So we talk about all these goals and objectives, but what ends up happening, sometimes you're thrown a wrench into the whole thing with the weather. And this was a good example of how this really set us back. I mean, we worked weeks and weeks recovering from, basically a rain event. But these rain events are becoming more and more frequent, and without planning for, the change in climate and these significant rainfall events, we're going to continue to have these problems. So, I mean, this is just a slide this was the Rollins Road, and this is just from water. Water is such a powerful natural. This is Union Street. This is Route 52. So you can just see, what running water can do. It's a powerful force. So this is on January 17th, not too long ago. This is this little stream that runs under Free Street. This heading down to Eric's Barbershop, completely overtopping that whole parking lot and ending up at the intersection of Mechanic and Washington, and flooding that whole area because then the stormwater system can't keep up with it. So, normally you wouldn't have seen this, but we're seeing this over and over again, more and more. So we need to, think about these things when we're planning infrastructure. And that's pretty much my presentation. I tried to do that pretty quickly. I know you guys have been here for a long time, so I hope I didn't go too quick. Any questions?
So Dave,
Yes,
can you hear me okay?
I can.
You could, the committee members will be able to get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. Is that correct?
I gave it, yeah, I think it should have been provided. Yeah.
Okay, so and I would recommend if people want to look at it tonight and tomorrow, whatever, just to remind them that this is a department, to show them that you do work you've got your hands into so much. Can we get started? Can you let go of that screen share?
I can.
Does anybody, well, I bet you have some questions. You should have a couple of questions.
I have a question right at the very beginning.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yep.
Okay, all right, and I think maybe this is more a question for Audra and even for the select board. I wonder, when I look at this, it's a very ambitious and well thought out program. And I wonder if any of those ARPA funds that we are beneficiaries of can be used to cover any of these projects that David has, I mean, they're very necessary and they're very ambitious at the same time and very expensive, but we have to have them. So are the ARPA funds available for that, or are they restricted?
So they really opened up what ARPA funds can be used for. And I think what we're going to talk about later on when we get to the capital improvements, capital reserve section of the budget is the John Street project that Dave referenced during his presentation. So that's the one that we're proposing to use the town's allocation of ARPA funds to fund that. And it's an expensive project. I think we got an estimate back that all up it would be a $2 million project to extend the sewer along there, install stormwater infrastructure there, put sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure there as well. But we think that between the ARPA funds, an MPI grant from the state of Maine, we can leverage enough external funding that that project is going to have much more minimal impact to the taxpayers than if we were going to take that on ourselves.
And MPI funds, again, Audra, it means what?
Municipal Partnership Initiative. So it's
okay.
When there's, because believe it or not, John Street is a state aid road. It's the lowest priority level ranking in the hierarchy. So it's like a level 4 road. But for communities that want to, do add additional infrastructure on state aid roads, you can partner with them through this MPI fund to do those projects.
Thank you.
Just so everybody knows also, just to add to that, that's going to create continuity or we're going to have a connective sidewalk if that ever happened from the downtown. You'll be able to go all the way down Pearl Street because we're going to work on Pearl Street on the upper end of it so that you can get to John Street. You'd be able to go down John Street on a sidewalk. We're working on the Route 1 project this year. That would take you all the way to the Hannaford. So that would make that whole thing walkable at one point. So it's kind of an exciting thing if you're a walker.
That's great.
I think
We're
it's
all
great.
walkers.
Yeah, we want to increase the ability to walk as much as possible.
Mhm.
So the ARPA funds, Audra, just to go back to the very briefly, do we then have to ask permission to use them for the John Street project, or is that we can just decide that as a town?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So it's as long as we go through the correct process of expending those funds, which is, town meeting in Camden.
Yeah. Okay.
Pamela?
Yeah, hi, Dave. I live on Harrison Avenue, so thank you so much for repaving it. It was getting pretty gnarly there. But I was also really happy to see the public landing walkway there. You're using use of the pervious concrete. I'm wondering if you're looking at other sort of green infrastructure solutions to things like the stormwater management. Is you're cataloging where all these basins are and things, catch basins.
I am. So, actually, the select board and Audra and I were talking about this just yesterday. And, when we work with engineering firms, we are seeking out, ideas to put green infrastructure into any of the stormwater collection or any of it, any ideas that we can incorporate into our infrastructure needs is one of the first things we look at. In terms of the pervious concrete, absolutely. I want to put that in other places, but it has a place and it can't be with a lot of organics and tree cover. I wanted to do it on Pearl Street, but I don't think I'm going to be able to because it would not last there. Like for instance, potentially it could be done on the sidewalk in front of town hall or just different areas. You can do it along the edge of the road. And it allows the water to kind of move down through it and not just run across the surface. So absolutely. I mean, that was the whole objective of working with that concrete association, and also to have Ferriello help us with that. That was all donated material because they know that by helping us install that, giving us a certification for our people to be able to install it and to give us the material and put it in place and show that we can do it. We'll probably do it in other locations. So that was the whole, premise behind all of that. And, I think it came out pretty good and it works pretty decent. It has its limitations, but it's better than just plain pavement.
That's great.
Maybe in conjunction with bioswales or things like
Exactly.
that.
Yes, absolutely. All of those things. Yeah.
Well, and I also just want to thank you also for including the budget for the trees, the new trees in town. One of the tree volunteers, so I really appreciate that.
Oh, great. Super. Yeah. I mean, I didn't talk about that, but we're creating a tree layer and we're doing, we're incorporating I just got word today that the whole town and a lot of work that people before us have done, cataloging the trees, Bart Wood's work and the emerald ash borer inventory, we were able to capture all that information, put it in our GIS system, so that we can sort all of that and know where it all is and plan for, like, if we have the emerald ash borer come through, we know where all those trees are, looking at a map on the town's website, and then we can plan for those things. So, and then we're also wrapping in with your help and the volunteers' help is through the Conservation Commission to catalog and inventory all of the potential tree locations for these 50 trees that we're trying to put in this budget.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Wow. Couple of things. I just want to just try to keep us. I just want to make a comment that this budget, it's 1.2 million, and it's pretty much in line. Mr. St. Laurent has done a pretty good job of keeping his budget in pretty tight check over the last quite a few years. He's performing a lot of services, and I have to compliment you, Dave, as including it's tricky to say it because you don't want to tell your employees that you're keeping an eye on them or you got an eye on them as far as reporting injuries, but to on one hand say you've got a really safe working environment. It's important to congratulate and tell the town and tell the insurance people, hey, I've got a good, safe working environment for my workers, my employees. But and I hope we can use your department as a model.
Well, it wasn't always that way, Peter. I mean, we had one rough year, and but we incorporate a stretch program every morning, and it's one of the three focus elements of what we do. So
I think we could all learn from that experience of having a challenge and costing some money and making a plan, putting a plan in place. And I bet you're going to stick to it.
We're gonna try. I always tell everybody, we just want them to do it safely, do it correctly, and, don't break anything. That's what we try and, that's what we try and do.
Any other questions, comments, criticisms?
I do want to say one thing. I mean, none of this could have been done without the staff that we had or Rick Seibel. Rick Seibel is, longtime public works director, phenomenal guy. Guy's amazing. He's carried this department for many years, and he's probably going to be retiring this year. And, I couldn't have transitioned into this job and done as much as I could without Rick's help and the people that have been here. And I also want to do this in memory of Rodney Feltus, who died last year of cancer. And he was the person that cleared all our sidewalks for many, many years, and he did it all by himself. So I'd like to also say that.
Wow, thank you. That's helpful, and that's timely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
No, that's all I had to say, really.
Thank you.
Yep.
I move that we accept the Public Works Department $1.227244 dollars. Excuse me.
I second it.
Any discussion? Any questions? All those in, go ahead.
Yes. First you take your jams on and finish it then okay?
I cannot hear.
I think it's somebody speaking with their child about brushing their teeth and getting their pajamas on. It wasn't directed towards us. Yeah.
Because we're not doing pajamas yet. Man. All those in favor?
Oops.
All those opposed? Thank you. Okay.
I don't think I can go on much longer. I'm sorry. I just
I can't either. I'm toast.
Okay. So can we have a motion to can we do that, Audra? Can we adjourn?
You can adjourn, but I would say that the highways, streets, bridges and sidewalks, Dave covered that in his presentation as well.
we can vote on that.
Okay.
Where is the budget?
A motion to accept the highways, bridges and sidewalks and streets
Oh, I
for
see.
400.
It's on page 20.
Page 20, right? One more flip. Is
That's-
everybody at least take a look at it?
Yeah.
I heard you, Andy. I second that.
It's moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? I bet we don't have much. Again, I commend you, Dave. It's a very well put together amount. It's not a fun department item. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn until next Thursday.
I second.
All
Thank
those-
you, everybody.
Thank you, Audra.